Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan that has barely watched any object shows. We have to fix that. Let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome into Object Catch-Up, the series where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them. Whether they are new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter. We will get to it all. Now, today's quest is very simple. I'm not sure if this video is going to take 1 day or 2 days because I am starting to record it very late. However, we will be taking a look at Flesh 2, which is the second season of Flesh. Yesterday, I took a Flesh Season 1, which was pretty cool. However, I wasn't able to take a look at both seasons in one go. Because that would have been like 3 or possibly even more days without a video, which I didn't want to do, so I decided, yo, Flesh, episode 1 here. And even though, are there other things that I should probably be taking a look at before Flesh Season 2? Yes, there are. However, the problem is I don't want to be defeated. Very simple. I don't want to lose to this series, okay? I don't want to be like, yo, I'm not going to watch this now because I got other things to watch. No, I said I started it. The quest started, and the quest shall end. We will get to it all. I'll get to everything else. There's tons of new episodes from show that we're keeping up with, and there's more on the way. I'm kind of waiting for more on the way. I'm waiting for stuff like Purgatory and Dips to release. That way we can do a big old keep up, right? A proper one, right? But in general, so far we have to take a look at Flesh 2, okay, and that's what we're going to be doing. Just a reminder, last time the season ended with Seth Rogen, Donkey Kong resetting the universe. However, Butcher, the host, and Piano, the villain, being gone. That was the one wish made. So how does the series continue? I don't know, because it had a relatively finite ending to it. Let's find out in Flesh 2, Episode 1, rated M for Mama. Alright, so that is episode 1 of Flesh 2, and there's a lot of interesting things going on here. Of course, we have the interesting question of how do you follow up what is overall a pretty, the finished show, right? Flesh was a finished show, but it did well, so, well, how do we make another one, right? So now, the current answer seems to be, well, we don't know why there's another one. We don't know how a season 2 is currently happening, and the contestants don't either. So, we end up that Medkit and Joe Bird end up falling into New Jersey, which is a different state than West Virginia, if you didn't know. Which means, and remember, the world was destroyed, which means that this is a different timeline, right? Because, I mean, presumably, we didn't do the whole thing. So, it's interesting because both Joe Bird and Medicate, they do remember the competition, right? They do remember the Flash competition where, of course, they were fighting for the horse, and they're going insane over it. So they decide to compete to try to analyze what's going on. So it's interesting that they remember, but they don't, right? It's possible that this might be the alternative timeline, right? That gets made at the end of the day, right? Because it's like it's one of those situations where like Seth Rogen Donkey Kong comes up with a thing that's a loophole, right? It's kind of like saying, yo, what if World War One never happened? Well, okay, if World War One never happened, though, there was just gonna be another war later, right? Like, if just it's that type of thing where, like, if you just go, oh, I wish that Butcher never hosted the show. Okay, well, if Butcher doesn't host the show, probably somebody else will, right? It's one of those situations. So it's like there's a very valid idea that this could be the alternate timeline that ends up getting made. Although it is a problem to think about, because if it is the alternate timeline getting made, it should have like properly made. Everybody should be there, right? Why did these two get teleported to New Jersey and the others didn't, right? It was like something's up in this situation, right? So it's interesting. We're gonna need to find out more about that later. But yeah, Joe Bird and Medkit end up being the two characters to come back. Should have been Bonk better than Medkit, but I'm just joking. Then we have ourselves some new fellows. So we have Scrumpy, which is like a bottle of like freaking what looks like 1950s vodka. They act drunk, but not drunk in the like crash way. They're like drunk in the highly go along with anything, a highly speaking talkative way, right? Then we got Steve, who's an excellent little design. We take the the handle of the steam Liqour, and we use it as one eye, and then we put the mouth over on that side. It's a great little design, and they look very nice. But then we have ourselves Wario, which ends up being, I think, an excellently voice acted character. Genuinely, Wario actually sounds really, it sounds a lot like Wario. Like, doing a Wario voice isn't easy. Should I try to, how to do it? Wario, Wario. How do you, I'm going to eat the garlic. It's not, it doesn't sound right. Or does it sound right? Maybe it does sound right. You know, maybe, what if I do, what if I am secretly a good Wario voice? I'm gonna eat the garlic. I don't think it quite sounds like Wario, but to be fair, I haven't trained it. But yeah, we got Wario. Then we have a couple of other fellas. Muscle Man, okay, which is the character from Regular Show. I'm gonna be honest. I think this guy had something with like this mom or something about like really looking up to her or something. I think I don't remember. I'm gonna be honest. I watched Regular Show 6 years ago. It's been a while. Like it's just like yeah, my bad. Like I used to watch on like the telly, but now I don't really. Then we've got the small shield potion, which speaks in has very, very deep voice, very low words. Doesn't speak a lot, like barely speaks at all, actually. So they're currently kind of a unknown character, kind of mystery, not really doing much. Then we have Gex Disc. Gex Disc. This character is weird. I was trying to, for the majority of the episode, figure out if Gex Disc is somebody speaking or if it's a text to speech, and I cannot figure it out for the life of me. It says Gex as Gex Disc in the outro, which makes me think that it might be voice lines. It might be a voice lines character that we've got here in the form of Gex Disc, which is cool. I must like it. Then we got Hexagon, which just kind of character. It's one of those Medkit style characters. There's not too much specific going on about them. They're just kind of a character and they're kind of fun. Then we got Tree with like a parrot on it. We don't get to hear too much about them. They seem to be more. They seem to be more like in terms of the power friendship. And then we have ourselves our host, which is H. Now, are you ready for H to be from an evil alien planet that destroys other planets, and then they arrived here to take the hamster, which is the prize, and then you go for that. You ready for that? You ready? Just repeat the finale. Just copy paste. It's gonna be great. Yeah, a hamster. I mean, look. The thing about a hamster is that, like, at the end of the day, like, sure, you change the timeline of the universe when you grab the horse, but the horse is still the horse. You know, like that's interesting because like the horse is still the creator of the universe. Which means that the hamster cannot be the creator of the universe, right? Like that has to be a different thing. What is a hamster? I don't know. It could be the type of reverse goal where it's like, oh, the horse was the best thing in the universe, so we're gonna do the antithesis of everybody thinks the hamster is also one of the best things in the universe, and it turns out that it's completely not, and it's actually just some boring ass bullshit, right? That might be the idea that we're going off here, which would be pretty cool. I mean, it would be kind of fun, to be honest. And then we have ourselves the two teams. So the two teams that end up getting made end up being team number one, Team Fortress 2, with Steam, Scrumpy, Muscle Man, Medkit, and Gex. I like this team. This team's cool. This team's cool. Everybody contributes to this team, I think, in my opinion. Steam is pretty solid. Scrumpy has got the chaos. Gex has got the cool, smart vibes. Medkit is just kind of fun. And Muscle Man is gonna come in with the random bullshit, right? So I think it's nice. It's got enough logic. It's got enough of an ounce of logic, but enough of an ounce of randomness. I think that it makes a fun team, and it's a good name, Team Fortress 2. I'm surprised no other people haven't tried this name. And then Butt Sauce ends up being the name of Wario's team. Now, this team is Wario, the small potion, the freaking shield potion, Joe Bird, Dutry, and Hexagon. This team, on the contrast, is quite poor. It's got an overwhelmingly powerful force in terms of Wario, who's just so loud. They will just overwhelm pretty much every other character on the show, right? And then that means that other characters aren't, and the other characters aren't too strong on this team. Like Joe Bird, a small shield person, they don't really seem like a character that's exactly going to, you know, speak up too much in Hexagon. Like, there's not enough authority to really fight against Wario, and Mario's kind of dumb, right? So it's gonna end up being complicated. Then the challenge ends up being to make a movie. You have $40 and a set if you want. Um, which is okay because of the set. If it was just $40, then it'd be very complicated to make something. But yeah. Team Fortress 2 ends up originally making a romance, ends up scripting out a romance. Steam ends up scripting out a romance film with like Medkit and Scrumpy. Medkit refuses to do it. I mean, Scrumpy doesn't mind, of course, because bro is broing. But Gex eventually comes in and is like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? we end up having no idea. I mean, well, Wario ends up agreeing on Joe Bird's idea. Sorry, Wario ends up agreeing on Joe Bird's idea of making a documentary about the United States of America, which is a bad idea because you can't do that with $40, right? Like, you're gonna need to go to locations to do stuff, right, to be accurate, and it's not exactly a great moment. But yeah, Wario ends up going over to do the movie. But it ends up being a really short movie because apparently Wario, while editing it, ends up putting doing a garlic jump scare, and the garlic jump scare ends up cutting the movie off. I mean, there's not a lot of movie. And then meanwhile, the other fellas, the other team, Team Fortress 2, ends up making a space movie about taking down Adam Sandler because there's an Adam Sandler universe where people think Adam Sandler is funny, which is apparently unacceptable. So they go do that, and then Adam Sandler from Click arrives to take down the fellas because they took down the universe where they thought Adam Sandler was funny. If you think I'm spouting out random bullshit, I yeah. One of the things I will say I appreciate about this show, one of the things that I think makes this show, is the fact that it keeps the laughter. Like, when I hear a stupid line being said, and then I immediately hear the laughter from like the VA, who just laughs immediately after filming it. It's the best, because it makes it fun. It's like I know that like they find it funny saying it just as like much as we find it funny hearing it, So that if there's a camaraderie, it's like, yes, this show's funny on both ends of the perspective, which is nice. I think it's rather enjoyable. Eventually, Adam Sandler, no, Markiplier. I forgot. Markiplier appears, but then we decide to explode everything, and then everybody dies. So yeah, that was a great movie, and it wins. It gets a 10 out of 10. So good job. Now, Wadio's movie was gonna be. Of course, they'd lose. To be fair to the Wadio movie, even though they didn't do well, right? They flopped completely. Um, they even if they did well, they likely wouldn't have won. It's one of those situations where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, we failed. However, it was an impossible situation to begin with, right? So I would give them the benefit of the doubt in this case. Who gets eliminated? The problem is probably Wario. I don't know how Wario wouldn't get eliminated here. Because, I mean, Wario 100% through the challenge here, right? So, like, Hexagon should be safe. I think Small Shield Potion doesn't do enough to get eliminated. I would say that Joe Bird, Partian, and Parachute, and Wario are the ones at risk. I have to predict Wario to get eliminated, I think, because it just makes way more sense than anybody else, right? Because I think the other ones, you kind of want to keep them around because they're kind of new characters, but Wario makes his presence very known. So, yeah, I think that I think bro just kind of you just gotta go, right? Surely you just gotta go. I mean, it's just come on, bro. So yeah, that is Flesh 2, episode 1, rated M for Man. Time for episode 2, titled Clint Eastwood. All right then. Alright, so that is the second episode of Flesh 2, Clint Eastwood. So we have ourselves our classic little start here where they're just kind of going on doing random shenanigans like shopping at the mall, buying stuff eventually. Something comedic happens, right? And I feel like this episode embodies a lot of how the writing of this show has gone, like so much of the time. And it's unfortunately, I think, in a situation like the one where I'm looking at it sort of moment by moment, right? Like I took a look at Flash yesterday, I'm taking a look at Flash 2 today, right? Episode by episode, right? I think that like I started to point it out in Flesh, but I think I'm gonna officially make the critique here, once and for all. I think that the way that these episodes are written is perfectly fine, but it starts to feel a bit formulaic after the amount of times that it gets done, because it ends up being like it's a different situation every time, right? And the jokes are different every time. However, the formula doesn't actually change. We take on the journey of, yo, this like random shit happens, and now there is a mystery villainous entity that we have to defeat. So the characters go along and they try to defeat them, and first they get absolutely ratioed until they find the weakness, and then they suddenly pew and win, right? That is what they do. That is how these episodes have been going, and it's happened a lot in the first season. It happened like for 3 or 4 episodes, right? Which is a lot considering there aren't that many episodes in Flash, right? And it's happened in this episode as well, right? But so something like that ends up being a little bit problematic because it starts to feel like, okay, it's this thing again. I don't mind it really, in this case, because hey, I mean, it's a new season, it's a clean slate, right? The fact that I'm watching it immediately after, that's my bad, more than it is anything else, right? So I don't mind it. It's a clean slate too. You can do it. I just don't want more. I just don't want too many more episodes to follow this structure, because like there's so many arcs possible in the universe. We don't just need to do the arc of, yo, person weird enemy is strong, and then we find the way to beat them, and then we beat them, right? Like it's just, come on. um but yeah, we end up having ourselves the elimination in a nice house, such a nice house that we have the elimination in. We're now having Medkit and Joe Bird kind of question the methods, right? Because it's like, hold on, wait, you didn't just murder whoever got eliminated, right? You didn't. The house is actually pretty nice and not like a weird bloody house, right? I mean, it's haunted. We end up finding out it's haunted. There's ghosts in it. That's not really their fault necessarily. Like they don't want the ghost to be there. It's kind of like Butcher's house is all bloody, but like they kind of want the blood to be there. It's not like, oh shit, there's blood in my house. No, like here H is like, oh no, there's ghosts in my house. I did not know this. Let's get rid of it. Right? Like when something bad happens, they don't want to be associated with the bad thing, which is different. Like Butcher gets associated directly with these events. This H guy, even if it happens, they don't want it to happen, right? So that's like kind of like that main important distinction between what is going on between the two situations. But yeah, it makes some guys, everybody else, kind of not wondering what is going on. I think Gex speaks in voice lines. Kind of. I don't know. If it's a text to speech, is very good for a character like. I don't know if Scrumley is also text. I don't know. I cannot tell you, and you know what? That's impressive. The fact I can't tell you is actually kind of crazy. I can't tell you who's text to speech and who is it, but like that is kind of crazy, right? But at our elimination, we end up having ourselves the eliminated contestant be the Jubilee and the Pear Tree or whatever it was called, with way more votes than the rest. I think 15 to whatever. So, which means that I was incorrect. It was one of the candidates. However, it wasn't the one I picked, which was Wario. I think I've been very bad at voting because I'm predicting the voting, because I think I have been mentalizing it the wrong way. I have been going, yo, the vote for the character who did the worst, but I feel like in this show, it's not really that bad to be bad, because it's funny, right? To be kind of mean, right? Which means that like you need to vote based on a different thing. So we vote for the character that's the least obviously funny, right? Which ends up being a character like this tree, because they don't do much. Of just kind of, hey guys, you're doing good, right? But yeah, they don't get they don't die, but they do get teleported to Great Britain, which is not the best place to get teleported to. But hey, I'm glad that hey, Great Britain exists though. That's what you know. That's now. Um, so that's cool. And then we end up having ourselves the challenge, which ends up being to get rid of the ghost. The muscle man talks to the ghost fella from Adventure Time, which has a name. No, not from Adventure Time. Different show. From regular show. Adventure Time, regular show. They're two words that are both the same length and all mean a super generic thing. Okay? Come on, give me some slack. It goes from regular to, which I'm sure had a name. I'm gonna need to Google it. Hold on. Give me a second. Ghost from regular show. The High Five Ghost. Oh, that's like your name. Fives. Oh, okay, cool. So, that I mean, we did say the name, but I didn't exactly understand it. So they say how to defeat a ghost, which is interesting. But you just need salt. But the guy can't tell it because they get taken away before that. So they all decide to go in the house and then do their whole couple, do the shebang, right? They do the whole ordeal. So yeah, we end up having some fellas and end up with some fellas. Another thing that I think is interesting, by the way, sorry for being distracted. Another thing that I think is interesting about this way, the way of writing of this show, is that you'll kind of notice it very obviously plays duos. It very obviously plays duos. It's in a very interesting way where it's like even within a team, even like at the end of the day, here we got a team, but like you can clearly see what the duos are being trying to make because Gex is with Steam way more often than anybody else. Medkit is with Scrumpy way more than anybody else, right? And this is a thing that was happening in season 1 as well, right? With that cast, like Goku Head and Sephiroth and Donkey Kong were with each other more than they were with anybody else, right? They were discussing each other. They went for Medkit in that season compared with Bonk, right? They were with each other more than anybody else, right? So even within a team, we kind of split it into a sub team, right? Because we end up doing that whole shit, right? Which ends up being kind of really interesting. So, like, it's another way to. It's like mildly segregated in a way where it's like, I mean, I would enjoy seeing more interaction, but it does help build arc, and especially in shows like this that don't have too many episodes. I understand why you just want to, if you just want to force out like characters to know each other, you just need to make them be with each other a lot, like more than you'd usually expect. But yeah, I must say the gag Wario Land 4 is my greatest achievement. It was very funny. I enjoyed that. But yeah, that team ends up going together. Then Wario tries to beat up the ghost, fails miserably. And yeah, oh yeah, that just starts the woes of that team. Even though Medkit eventually gets grabbed over by a portal or whatever, Steam and Gex get informed by Scrumpy that they do the whole thing. So then they all meet upstairs, the Ally people, and then the Ultra Ghost arrives. They run away. The Ultra Ghost comes in at the door. Then they end up eventually having a crucifix, which works. Okay, just like it works. And then the ghost arrived, and then we're trying to stop the ghost. However, because the Bible, which is a way to apparently stop the ghost, just banish them, banish the ghost, right? So crucifix to do all this stuff, which is fair. And it is working until one of the chairs just so happens to hit Grumpy in the head, which since it's a glass bottle of vodka, it doesn't end up working out. So then the fella is going to win. However, Muscle Man comes in with Medkit. OMG, where the hell did they go? It is impossible to know. Medkit was not happy with living after their escapade, which means that they must have struggled, right? But then Muscle Man eventually wins with the salt, ends up defeating the fella, and Hexagon is super mad that they're up for elimination again. Yeah, no, this seems bad. There's not too much to say about it. Like, as I said in the beginning, the other team is very solid. It is very strong. It is a proper team of people that has got a unique set of skills, but also like an agreement on minds, right? Like there's not an overwhelming force, and there's nobody super dumb. Right, like there's a couple of that are kind of dumb, but nobody's super dumb. Everybody pitches in, everybody does well, and the team, yeah, in this team, it's so over reliant. Like everybody's just kind of forced to listen to Wario because there's no leader otherwise. Which means that if Wario isn't there, it's a lost team, right? Because they don't know what the hell they're doing, right? However, the problem is if Wario is there, it's a lost team because Wario doesn't know what he's doing. They're just like it's a difference between having no leader and having a bad leader, right? It's a loss either way. I mean, the other team, okay, and you wonder, but the other team doesn't have any leader. Yeah, but do you understand? Is that like there is a combined leadership between them? It's like everybody pitches in 20%, and then you end up having a solid team, right? Because you end up having 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, and then that team, Team Fortress 2, ends up feeling like a unit, right? Like they work for each other, they understand each other, and they will overall listen to each other's ideas, right? In the meanwhile, Hexagon, Jupiter, and Small Shield Potion barely have any ideas, right? They're like not any smarter than the other team, but they barely get many ideas, right? So it's like, let's say they maybe pitch in like 10%, right? But then they pitch in like 10%, and then it's like 30. You get 30% of a team, right? And then Wario comes in. The problem is that and Wario is theoretically the leading force, right? Which means that with like 70%, because like bro is loud, right? Wow, then we should have 100%. However, the problem is that Wario placed a negative symbol before it, which means that actually Wario contributes negative 70% to the team because they actively make them do dumber shit, right? So it's not great. Who gets eliminated? I think it's going to be Small Shield Potion. They don't do much. The only thing they do is try to shoot a gun, and it doesn't work. So, yeah, they don't have an asset. They were the second most eliminated every time. You could vote Hexagon because they're pissed. However, I would personally keep them around. I'm going to go with Small Shield Potion in this case. And we're gonna be hoping for the best. Let's see if my new philosophy ends up working out, or if I still need to, if I still need to work it out. I like it. The tree is just trying to order a Sprite in Great Britain. But yeah, I find it interesting that like everybody. Okay, this is the dumbest conversation ever. I find it interesting that the people of the United Kingdom in flesh are different looking than the way that everybody in France was the same PNG. The people in Great Britain are different apparently, which I think is interesting. Anyways, episode 3 of Flesh 2 is titled "Let's Get It All Night." Let's go. Alright, so that is episode 3 of Flesh 2, which is Let's Get It All Night. So, nice. Okay, this is pretty good. As I said, I was getting worried about these episodes that were just kind of fight a thing, but this episode was different. It's got a different challenge. It's got kind of a different vibe to it. Although it is mildly a callback to season 1, right, with the whole Minecraft shebang. However, it is different in nature, different in concept. It's unique. It's nice. I enjoy it, right? So, we have the winning team that's relatively relaxing, and then we're ending up debating the other team because the other team's like, yo, we are just straight up worse than the other team. Well, how the hell do we win a challenge, right? And well, we end up finding out here how they win the challenge, but it ends up kind of being a little bit of a complicated. It's a complicated way, okay, to get the challenge. Elimination. So. The eliminated contestant this time ends up being none other than Hexagon with set 19 votes compared to 10. I am this makes sense. It was yet again my second choice. It's always my second choice who gets eliminated. Have you ever noticed? I don't know why is it that it's always my second choice getting eliminated. We need to stop this. Okay, I'm not going to single right. I mean, no. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense in the sense that Hexagon has been kind of annoying, kind of a complainer for 4,000 in the way that, yo, you're dumb, this sucks, I don't like this, I don't like that, right, and it's like, okay, stop, please. So, fair enough. I kind of like them, I would have kept them around, however, I see why they're gone. And then they end up going over to Britain to do their thing. So we end up apparently being in an apartment building. It's an apartment building that is being hosted by the letters at large. It's just that it's a property of the letters. So our host here ends up being like, yo, I need to put in summer. I have this apartment building in the UK with the boys, and therefore I will send them to that. So everybody has their own room, apparently. For some reason, the ghost is also there, but I guess I don't know where the host would go. I mean, I guess they were living in the house, so it's kind of mean to kick them out. So yeah, they end up living in the apartment, which is pretty nice, and it is interesting. It implies that, I mean, to have an apartment building, to like be properly in that in a scenario, you have to be from the land, right? It's kind of like, so that means that the letter fellas, they do seem to own property, they do seem to be things from Earth. Now, to be fair, Butcher was also an entity from Earth, right? It wasn't, they weren't from an outside being. The outside being from space was Piano, right? I mean, the letters, I mean, especially, like, it is definitely a word perception. Like, the reason why the default expectation when I see these letters is for them to be an outer worldly being. It's not because of piano or whatever. No, the expectation is entirely because that's just algebrailians, right? Algebrailians are these types of characters that are letters, but they're that are letters and they're numbers and they're symbols, but they're outer worldly beings from not that like decide that go to a land to do the competition, rather they live in the land and do the competition, right? That's basically how that works. So it's interesting, but it's gonna be weird to see. It doesn't seem like anybody here in this season is currently striking out as a villain. I mean, these early boosts, they seem very chill, and especially because the fact is that they're not really dying either, right? Like, there's so little sinisterness going on. I mean, because at the end of the day, it looks like the show just seems to be a universe reset type of thing. So it's like the good future in Sonic CD, but of like Flesh, right? Which means that like, it's not looking very like there's not a lot of drama going on right now. Like, the only thing that is currently very mysterious that could be drama is what is a hamster? Like, what is a hamster? Because the horse was the creator of the universe, we know that. But what the hell does the hamster do? Yeah, uh, but it'll be interesting to see. I found M being a maid very funny. And then we have ourselves our challenge. So everybody gets sent over to a Skyblock island. Simple. They're both in Skyblock. And the challenge is make the best looking island. May the best looking island win. So what is the tactic for the challenge? I mean, it's kind of to just play Skyblock, right? Skyblock is entirely a game about getting the most resources. So you want to get saplings. You want to get a lot. You want to get a cobblestone generator. You just want a lot of shit, right? And then from there, you can build a structure. It's not going to be complicated at the end of the like because in Skyblock you really do have limited resources. There are of course the other islands, but we don't ever end up actually getting to them, which means that like in general, we should just build something. Like I'd probably get a shit ton of cobblestone and then try to make a cobblestone tower. You know, something like that. Like make a tower, make like a castle, whatever. Just some type of structure that looks okay within cobblestone, because cobblestone is the one thing to have infinite tool. Yeah, you can have a lot of wood, but you can't have an excessive amount of wood, right? But yeah, the teams end up doing the whole shebang. The Team Fortress 2 team, yet again, they seem to like they're just soloing everything. In general, like they're doing perfectly fine. You know, like they have. But like Scrumpy has bombs, right, which ends up being a mod problem. But in general, like nobody's gonna set them off, and they're being pretty chill. We have a couple of issues with, how do I, with Muscle Man, which ended up doing some kind of dumb. Like they actually go to the other island, except they try to get the sand as well for glass. However, by trying to get the sand, they actually make the island fall, so they fall. So then that's a little bit of an issue. However, again, it's not major blunders like how Wario makes a major blunder, right? but screwing up the cobblestone generator. We know there's obsidian, so they only have wood to play with, and they try their best to get something done. However, it just kind of ends up being complicated. But then it's like, how does that team not lose? Well, they don't lose because they get bailed out to heaven and back because First of okay, actually, before hold on, let me just calm myself for a moment. Steam is I said I like Steam design. Steam design is getting better. Steam is the bonk of season 2 in terms of like I like them. I like Steam. They're cool. They have a unique voice. Um, they're fun to look at. But anyways, we end up having some uh, some interesting things. Is that the islands apparently connect to each other. Basically, that's the only thing. Like they're close enough to each other to where we manage to throw stuff to the other team's island, right? So then what do we end up doing? We end up throwing in a bunch of burning blocks, right? And then they end up landing on the other island, which ends up working, however, because why? Because you can it turns on the bombs. You know those bombs that were being held together by Scrumpy, right? It's activating those. It's lighting them on fire. Now, a couple of things that I don't really understand. How do they know, right? Because it's like over this team, the Mech Kit team, right? Team Fortress 2, they don't know where the flames are coming from, right? But the other team knows that the flames are going over to Team Fortress 2, right? That's kind of the weird thing, because I don't know why they just started throwing shit for no reason unless they saw that it worked in actually doing an attack. However, how did they see that? How did they realize that? Because they're too far away to actually be visible to one another, the islands, right? So, like, I mean, not even the sand island was invisible. So, no idea how the hell these doors work. They also break the rules of Minecraft because obviously a block can't be on fire in the way that like it as a throwing block, right? It has to yeah, it can be burning, but it can't really be on fire in the way that it is actually in the thing. So by breaking the rules of Minecraft and utilizing mysterious knowledge that somehow they only have, that team ends up winning. Because otherwise they would have Omega lost. I'm not gonna lie, it actually was gonna be very very bad. Medkit at this point is just tired of everything. They end up actively saying the statement, I already completed. I already competed in Flash. And then it's like, wait, what? You competed in Flash? But then, of course, they get distracted because bombs are blowing up around them. Right? But we're starting to probably develop this plotline. It's going to become a little bit of a problem because they have a limited amount of time to actually do this. Because like at the end of the day, Joe Bird has already risked it, being the second most votes, and in this elimination, I think Medkit is going to be risking it, which it makes it an unfavorable situation. I'm not gonna lie, it's looking complicated, but yeah. A last attack from the fellas for the Scrumpy fellas with a cannon that they somehow have. How do you have it? They end up yeeting the fella over to try to blow up the island. It doesn't work. So because they get shot by the shotgun from the mini potion. So then they end up winning the challenge with a 3 out of 10 compared to a 0 out of 10 because South is your team. But I think it's not. I mean, it's not great. It wasn't a great performance. I mean, this team is still abysmal in every quantity, right? Like they win because of a completely botched random idea. So hey, you got to make them win sometime, but yeah, that wasn't great. And then the fellas up for elimination. I even like Steam's logo, bro. Steam's logo is great. Gex disc. Oh, is that the double? What is that? 007. Oh, that's cool. These are some fun. These are some fun references in the voting icons. I actually really like them. However, yeah, I would personally eliminate Muscle Man. However, I think my prediction is Medkit. My prediction is Medkit. I mean, if we eliminated Hexagon the other time, I think Medkit should be the one going because even though they are a returnee, so was Joe Bird, and they're already close to elimination. However, they're directly kind of refusing the show. They're being kind of mean to the other people, and they're also refusing to compete. Like they're like, they like don't want to compete. You know, they're like directly. And when people don't want to compete, usually people vote for them. However, usually has been very difficult for me to actually pin down in this show. So, I mean, I believe that things is going like that, but maybe not. And then at the final scene, the post-credit scene of the episode, we have a universal remote or whatever. I don't know what they're doing. Teleporter. um, for that hexagon invents. I don't know why. I think bro really doesn't like being. Okay, England's not that bad. But like they ended doing that. But then apparently for some reason that teleports like a freaking milk box. That I'm not gonna lie. That looks eerily familiar. That box. That box looks eerily familiar. I looked at that and I was like, I know you from something. I can't. I tried to think of it. I don't know what it's from. But yet, I mean, I didn't look into it, as in I didn't do research on it, but I tried to think about it for a moment. It's like, no. I mean, there's a couple of very similar milk cans in certain shows that I've watched. I'm thinking Pop Tart Pursue, a very similar character, called like Banana Milk. That is like a jug. I think there's a character in BFAH who's also pretty similar, right? However, in general, of like stuff that this might have actually been inspired from, I cannot currently tell you what it was. I just don't remember, which is very, very unfortunate. But yeah, that episode was nice. I like challenges that are more this style. However, in general, like I like this episode. However, at the end of the day, you can't just do this episode again. You have to vary it, right? The joke has to keep itself in new, fresh ways so that the show keeps being new and fresh, right? Does that all sound right? Okay. Episode 4 of Flesh 2 is titled We Are, alright? Let's watch it. Let's go. Alright, so that is episode 4 of Flesh, and we are starting to piece it together, the puzzle a little bit of what the plot line of the show is going to be, because as it goes, this season, of course, is drawing a lot of interesting parallels to season 1, so, that means that we're gonna need to, of course, get some parallels. And here we're starting to figure it out. We're starting to clock these things, right? So we start off here with Medkit chatting, being still super worried about what the hell is happening. Like how is Flesh happening in again, right? Gex Disc is like, yo, what is going on? And Gex start talking. Okay, Gex talks in voice lines. I don't think anybody else does, but Gex, I'm 99% sure, talks in voice lines from the game. But as I said, I think is very cool. I really like it when a character does that. I think that it's super underrated way of making it work, because it's an interesting constraint, no? Because you have a finite amount of things that a character can say. However, it allows for interesting answers to things and different ways of wording possibilities, which I think makes for interesting things, right? Of course, for a more serious show, I probably wouldn't recommend it. However, for a show like this, that's overall, a relative joke, we end up having it's pretty nice, right? It's a nice to have addition that's fun. Gives off some additional creativity. It's just overall kind of cool, and there's nothing negative about it, right? So yeah, shout out to Guest Disc. And now Cookie Milk has awoken. So first of all, we get to discover Cookie Milk apparently was competing in Christmas Clash. Now, Christmas Clash, if I'm not mistaken, was in fact the other show that was getting made by Flavio. Around just in the very, very long ago. Currently, I don't think Flavio has made any show for ages and ages. Like, this fella seems very much so retired. However, that was the show made before Flesh. It's called Christmas Clash. And Cookie Milk, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Milk and cookies. So, haha, it's gonna be milk that's flavored like cookies. So it's the Cookie Milk, right? That just seems like a character that that would be on that show, right? So it just so happens that they drop down from the sky, teleported because they were competing a show, and then boop, and then there we go, right? Which is interesting because of course that's the exact same thing that happened to Medkit and Joe Bird, right, from Flesh. However, it's interesting because the story seems to be a little bit different over here because in this situation, It's difficult to know because I don't know what Joe Bird and Medkit's last memory was before getting TP. That's the question, right? That's the question that we don't have an answer to, because at the end of the day, they were already eliminated for a while. So are we talking about like the Medkit was just relaxing in the freaking, waiting, right? Because they weren't doing anything by the time that the world reset. They were just chilling over there because they took down what they need, and they were just waiting for Goku Head or Sephiroth or Donkey Kong to do that shit, right? Um, but in general, I think it's interesting when, like, I also have no idea where Cookie Milk arrives from, because I mean Christmas Clash is a show that's over, is a show that ended by 2 years, I think, by the time that this episode airs, which means that we don't know like what timeline we're coming in. Are we coming in from post finish Cookie Milk, or like in the middle of the show they all teleport? Like, what happened? We don't get to know this yet, but yeah, they end up questioning what they're doing until Joe Bird gets it taught along. It's like, yo, they fell along as well, which is crazy. So things are starting to look a little bit suspect until H goes like, yo, you're on this team now, which also means that we need a new intro, because of course, new character, new intro. The intro is significant. It's honestly actually simplified by a significant margin, which is interesting. Why? The intro got simpler, but yeah, I mean it's fine. And then we end up having some chat about it. Yeah, okay. I find it really interesting the fact that I like Steam, because Steam is like, if you think about it, the reverse of Bonk. It's like literally reverse bonk. It's like, instead of just being niceness express, it's like kind of sassy logic express. This is what Steam is, and I don't know what it is about it, but I do like it. But it's definitely getting carried by the design. I think the design is cool, but yeah. Eventually they go to the elimination place, and we do, well, the elimination, where the big old eliminated contestant ends up being with 54 votes. By the way, new record for some reason. I mean, I'm not sure what exactly happened to cause that voting record, but something did. Um, and then it just seems like an aggressive H ends up actually doing murdering the people, because the rocks from the rock collection end up being a murder. But eventually sent over to Great Britain is none other than Medkit. I finally got one right. Yeah, I mean, that, if you think about it, yeah, that makes sense. Medkit was just too aggressive and didn't want to compete. And if you don't want to compete, you're just not gonna compete. So yeah, Cookie Milk is wondering, yo, is this all that's happening? And then H is in the hospital because apparently they have some weird virus, okay? And then, however, new random lore dump from the brother of H, which is called S and just so happens to be a sailor. Bro, it's so funny. It's actually hilarious, because the letters are just based on like what they are. So like H is a host, S is a sailor, M is a maid, A probably is like apartment. Like, it's just so stupid. But when it's coming, there's apparently a cure hidden on an island, and we have maps to the island, right? Because it was hidden away by the ancient grandfathers, which are exclamation mark. So they go over to do that. Indeed they do. Which is all right. What do I think of this challenge? This challenge is okay, but it plays on the second trope that this show tends to deliver, is that this is a save the host. Oh no, type of scenario that we did in Flesh about, I think, 3 episodes, right? No, I think 2. Well, it was at least 2. It was at least a jury trial, and then the thing. No, sorry. It was at least a jury trial and the Bowser Castle. And technically, if you want to consider it, the Butcher's son getting kidnapped also counts. Yes, about 3, right? Where it's just like save the host or a host adjacent thing. Here's our first cases of doing that. But again, it's okay. I'll validate it for one time. And then we end up going. So this challenge ends up actually being the first one that properly seems to go Wario's way. The team team, but whatever, ends up doing pretty good in this challenge at the end of the day. And I mean, yeah, it's Wario is looking for treasure. If this bro doesn't win, that would be a generational throw, right? There aren't many things that Wario is good at. In fact, there are actively less things that Wario is good at than there are things on Earth. However, it's like the treasure hunting is one of the things that Wario should be good at doing, and indeed they do prove to do that, right? They're capable of fighting, they're capable of winning battles in a very interesting way, right? Where it's like they end up kind of being like it looks kind of, it's the weird way to win, but they always manage to win here, especially as we end up having the fight with the Kirby's eventually later, right? What I think of this fight with the fight with the Kirby's is fine, but again, I don't know. Watching this show in one go, I don't recommend it. I really don't, because like it just ends up, it really does lose its novelty after a little bit. Unfortunately, it's like it's just there's such a little, like the stakes go down every time, because it's like, oh yo, it's battle, how are they gonna win, because at the end of the day they're going to win. They're going to win the battle. When they are faced with an obstacle, they will be overcoming the obstacle. Like, it's just one of the things that's going to happen, right? And it's unfortunate to say, when, like, can they ever just not sometime? Can they lose? It'd be interesting sometime if they just died to the Kirby's. Like, wouldn't that be interesting if that happened sometime? But no, it never does. They will always win. Like, at a certain point, I need them to lose. Please. Like, bro, y'all too Gucci at this. Um, but yeah, we end up having some discussion about Flesh for a little bit. Then we end up wondering, Cookie Milk is apparently seasick, which is an interesting detail. Of course, I mean, we have a couple of things about Cookie Milk that we don't really know, right? Cookie Milk ends up inserting themselves relatively well into the cast. They're way more relaxed. They're like a they're like a scaredy. They're like a Steam Medkit combo, I think, in my opinion, because they're relatively logical, but they're also like pretty um they're pretty giddy, but they're also a bit logical and quieter, right? Which is interesting. But yeah, at the end of the day, Wario's team does win because they did well, right? However, the other team did a catastrophic mistake, right? Team Fortress 2 is the first challenge where they do a big error, right? And the big error that they do is they drive the ship the wrong way because the map was in reverse. And why did that happen? Well, that happened because we put too much faith at the end of the day. As I say, Team Fortress 2 is a great team because they always put the 20% in, right? They put the 20% in, which means that, like, overall, they make a very combined unit that helps out each other and, like, plays off the strengths. However, in this one, we put too much faith. You need to have everybody check the plan. You can't just have, like, one person dictating a plan. Is not going to quite work for this team because nobody is quite leadership enough to be able to dictate correctness, right? So in this case, we just put the faith that Muscle Man can drive, right, can sail, then nobody else checks the map. If literally just one other person takes a look at the map that Muscle Man takes a look at, then they would probably realize it's upside down and flip it, right? Like, they would just realize. However, in this case, they don't do that because we put way too much faith on one character, right? We put way too much responsibility. It has to be a global check. If like 2 or 3 people check everything, then eventually we're gonna find the best solution, right? Rather than what one person might invent, right? So yeah, they end up losing. Just it's catastrophically bad. I'm not gonna lie. It's truly a bad sight to behold. They end up turning on some super switch that happens to exist, and they're on the way to the island at very fast speeds. Cookie Milk. Okay, Cookie Milk is capable of spawning in a vending machine. You can do that. You can just spawn in a vending machine. It's like, yes, I am a vending machine, and I will vend. Okay, I'm. What did I just say? And apparently the vending machine is able to do whatever Cookie Mix does. That is very interesting. I don't know if that's a thing from Christmas Clash, but whatever it is, it's a cool character trait to have, just the ability to spawn that in. But yeah, and maybe Steam was going to be capable of driving us to the, no, sure, sailing us to the island, right? However, unfortunately, Muscle Man again does an elite tier error. This one at least was a bit more justified, but they end up flopping massively by pressing the anchor button, and therefore, yet again, completely losing for their team twice over, which is really bad. But yeah, our team ends up giving off the results, and they end up being safe, which means that the other team's up for elimination. It was this, yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody kind of didn't do too bad. Scrumpy was okay, Gex was okay. I mean, Gex really shouldn't go home because Gex is doing the thing with the. Like, I think Gex and the whole mecha shebang should keep Gex pretty safe. In my opinion, Steam very reasonably tried to lead the team. It didn't work, but it was a reasonable attempt, right? And then Scrumpy doesn't do much in this episode, so could get out, right? However, in this case, I know I say that I shouldn't base it on challenge performance, but in this case I got him, man. It was so bad. The challenge performance was genuinely abysmal. Muscle Man did so horrendously. Like, generally made their team go the wrong direction, and when they were coming back, made sure that the team didn't. It's generally it is one of the worst challenge performances I have seen from any individual player, just in general. It was not good. So yeah, Muscle Man is my prediction, and then Scrumpy's probably the second pick if it's not them. Steam or Gex, in my opinion, should be probably safe. Okay, Steam is a little bit snarky, which could be an issue for Steam. I don't know. To be honest, like again, I like Steam, but I'm not sure if other people like Steam. So I guess I'll keep that in mind. But I still think Scrumpy, with just their lack of a lot of screen time in this episode, should be relatively more in danger than Steam, I think. So yeah, Viz ends up officially getting confirmed with Cookie Milk. I think like in the credits, the other episode, we had Viz as question mark, question mark, question mark. I was like, wait, what? What does that mean? But he ended up having that. What's our post credit scene? Our post credit scene. Oh yeah, the villain. The villain Hexagon is doing some weird shit in the lab. He's capable of predicting the future with the whole machines that they have. And alright then, let the villain at work. The villain is at work, boys. It's a previously eliminated contestant doing villainous activities because they want to be evil and they want to be a villain and they want to do all of the villainous things that are pretty cool and they're pretty alright, right? And they do all of that jazz. And yeah, it's Piano 2. Shout out to the sequel to Piano. Everybody loves it. And yeah. All right, it's time for for episode 5, because I mean there's not too much I can say about Hexagon right now. I mean Hexagon is just being a generic evil. His daughter's on boss guy. Episode 5, Law and Liquor. Let's go. Okay, that is episode 6 of Flesh. That one is of Flesh 2. Yeah, for the sequel to Flesh 2. And that is very, very interesting. That episode's a doozy, bro. I would say bro, this is a great start to the recording. Like that episode's a doozy, bro. Like this one is crazy. I think the best way for me to properly like chat about this is yet again to make a comparison point, right? So this is the objection of the season, right? You know how season 1 of Flash, there was the objection episode. This is very much so kind of related to that, in the sense that like one joke ends up yes anding itself to an entire freaking world of randomness, right? With tons of completely random other characters thrown in that now just so happen to exist in the world, right? And like this entire situation ends up happening because of this episode. So let's start off here at the beginning where we have some goofy starts, some people chatting and everything, right? Um, yeah, Wario is doing the whole shebang with the alien, right? Because that's how the last episode ended because of the prize, right? And then we end up having some fellas. You know what? I genuinely cannot. I like. I don't, dude. I think that the small shield, right, is voice lines as well. Pretty sure. I don't think that that fella is. That Scrunchy is. I really don't. Because, like, yeah, I don't think that Scrumpy is, which is interesting though, because it's such a powerful voice, and it's just, I don't think it's just listed as Demo Man, I think, on the credits, and I was like, wait, that's not, is that a person? It doesn't sound like the name of a person. It sounded the name, like that does sound the name of a character, but it's just, it's interesting. But they say so many unique lines that it feels like it has to be right, which I think is interesting. H proceeds to do the elimination. So we end up doing the elimination after Steam ends up being mean. And it turns out that Muscle Man does indeed get eliminated with 17 votes compared to 9 for Steam. So yeah, I mean, indeed, that was obviously going to happen. I think, in my opinion, there was just no way not to vote him. Like, even if if you can excuse one of their mistakes, as soon as they make a second mistake, it's like, okay, stop. It's like, okay, what are we doing? What, like, there's a level of throwing that you kind of can't excuse, and I think Muscle Man definitively did that. Um, Although I will say it's very interesting to see Steam at the second, as the second last, the one with 9 votes, which implies that people are not necessarily jiving too much here with Steam. We're not necessarily vibing too much here with the Steam way of things, right? Which is interesting. It is a bit of a situation, right? So we're gonna need to think about it here. Um, then we end up having them get eliminated. So we have our challenge, except we don't have a challenge because the fellas are tired. Our contestants are tired. We keep doing challenges back to back to back because this isn't like another show, right? In other shows, constantly we do the thing of the host just dips for 3 months and then comes back challenge. But no, this show just proper acts it out back to back. We go bun, 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 done, right? There's like a decent room of time after an elimination to relax, but no, sorry, after a challenge to relax, but after an elimination it's just straight to challenge, right? So yeah, we end up watching the TV. Larry the Potato ends up getting sliced up. Cookie Milk finds it funny, which I think is extremely interesting. You know what? Find is interesting because remember, Cookie Milk is from a different place. Like, Cookie Milk isn't from here. Cookie Milk, knowing about Larry the Potato, the TV show that plays in New Jersey, is immensely interesting. That actually interests me a shit ton because it's like, where are you from? Where does Christmas Clash take place? I don't know, but it's very interesting. They do find it funny, and then apparently Corey Island ends up being made. No, Corey Island. You know what I'm thinking of. Corey Land ends up getting made because it's a theme park, and then H is like, we have to go now. Right? It was like an ad. No, it was like a news. So then H decides that we're going to the train station so that we can take a 17-hour long train straight to Corey Land, which is a theme park. I'm just gonna preface this entirely, okay, by saying I have not the slightest clue who Corey is. Just gonna be absolutely for real out here. Just gonna throw it out there in the world. I'm not going to judge this joke or the nature of it or who, because I don't know who this is. Okay? but I'm sure I don't know. But okay, everybody gets cramped up in a car. And then we end up having them eventually get over to the train station. We end up meeting the other members of the train. Who do we end up meeting over there on the train? We end up meeting, like, not Sun Tzu. No, that's a different guy. No, Master Nobu, who's some fella who likes Cory, apparently. And then we have like a Sigma, like an alpha man, like I don't, who has like a Pookie Bear or whatever, and was role playing with them. Then there is like this the guy voiced by Guy Green, which is do you think I know these names? They're like a freaking. They're green. they are. It's a green guy. I'm trying. That's just what the guy is. I don't remember the name. And then there's a tree bark with a face on it that doesn't ever actually speak. Then you have T, who's a train conductor. I love the joke. I love the joke. Oh, sorry. I adore the joke of having each letter do the job that letter does. Like let's start with that letter. It's really funny. I really want to have like I need the joke to happen where they go to another place where the job title it starts with an H, so then the host has to just go do that job. It's like, hello, I'm the hotel manager, right, or something like that. Like it would be absolutely hilarious. But yeah, train, and apparently we have a train conductor who's apparently the biggest Cory fan. So they end up going over in the train. We're chilling, people are chatting. They don't like the challenges. They go to the bathroom, which you can do, by the way, if you're Steam. Apparently Steam can go to the bathroom. And then the fella has died. H has died. They have been stabbed as everybody else was going places. And now we have no idea what the hell we got to do. So we have to do an investigation. Kick the people out so we can bring them back and investigate them immediately. Shout out to that incredible piece of decision making. But we start off making with Nobu the Master, or whatever they were called. So apparently they were just teaching Gex this karate, and Gex this just freaking what do they do? Kicks Scrunchy and just murders them. Which, yeah, it's fun. I like Gexgus. Again, I don't know. I think there's a charm to characters like Gexgus. Again, I've said it a million times, but I'll say it again. This show says the same story a million times, so come on. Like it's fun. Then the Pookie Bear guy. Okay, I'm gonna call him Pookie Bear guy. I don't remember what this guy's called. I don't know if he got a name, but he is apparently doing. So should I feel like I should give up in life. No, no. Okay. I was doing a role play or whatever through the phone, in a over room, like a bathroom. No, not in the bathroom. The bath steam is in the bathroom. A different room, and it was had the cell service cut out in the middle of the phone call. And then Wario and friends were hearing it like, "You are disgusting, garlic." So yeah, that's fun. Then we have the other fella. Cookie Milk ends up being a very pro investigator. John Sega. Yeah, that's what you were called. However, Drunchy and the gun fella, the Fortnite mini shield. I don't. I'm forgetting the names. My brain is starting to get more fried. My apologies to the gang, but yeah. This fella ends up apparently not being a fan of Cory, so they were investigating H, but they weren't actually there to murder. They were just investigating. A spy has to get info, not murder, right? That's a different thing. That's an assassin, right? Which is interesting. I like how they don't. I like how they completely go like, you're spying on him. Yeah, I mean, sounds good to me. They don't. It's like they don't mind at all. Like, it's actually hilarious. They don't even make a fuss about it. They don't mention that. It's like, you want to spy on it? Oh, I mean, cool. Just don't murder. But like, if you want to spy, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay with me. Like, it's just great. But yeah, the tree bark ends up. It doesn't ever actually say anything, but Apparently, there are cameras that they need to find, but then it just so happens that conveniently the floor breaks and there happens to be an entire white layer of void below the train because that makes a lot of sense. So now they go down there. And they chill out. They're in the void, which is a little bit weird. There's a freaking croissant chilling over there in the middle of the void. They nearly die. And then we asked, yo, do you have a security room? And then there is a room. And there is, in fact, a security room below the train because that is something that can, in fact, exist. Have you tried? Go dig down when you're in your next train. There will be a security room there. And then we end up going, yo, this is, I can't show you the footage, unfortunately. It's confidential information. I can't do it. So, yeah. And then Seam goes, yeah, but like, 50, I'll give you a $50 Steam gift card, which is interesting. As usual, it's kind of interesting to when, like, a social media or like just kind of a media an application is a character because it's like I mean it's a $50 gift card for themselves, which is interesting. But yeah, like the Steam, like it's interesting, but I guess Steam as a platform can act independently of Steam the person, but Steam is also the platform. You see, it's like it's a really interesting world that happens, and I know that there's entire shows about apps, but like usually shows about apps are a little bit different because they're all apps, right? So they have that shared camaraderie. In this case, Steam is like is the only one of that type here, right? Like I mean, I don't know. Watch episode 7, like Epic Games Launcher comes in and has an epic battle with Steam. Are you ready? Are you ready? This is definitely happening. Now that I think about it, how does that not happen? How does that not happen? That is a legal requirement that must happen. It has to occur. It's just the way that it is. But yeah, eventually the guy accepts and goes like, yeah, I mean, oh yeah, we'll give you the tip. So then, of course, they go over, and they play the tape. Oh yeah, the guy really wants to play Balan Wonderworld. Was that a new game? When did that release? When did Balan Wonderworld release? I remember that game was like a big meme back in the day. Balan Wonderworld released in 2021. This video released in 2022. Okay, so it was already outdated. Good to know that we are using outdated memes because that's the way to make it accurate. All right, if you use outdated memes. So yeah, great stuff. Then eventually they get back out using Harry the Happy Elevator. Oh my god. Like I enjoy it because it has this way of calling back to itself, man. Like this show's smart because of it. It has this capability of referencing itself that just makes it a satisfying watch. It's what I say about a lot of other shows, and this joke show is pulling it off better than real shows. You know, it's like it's managing to take these like moments from it that seem like one liner. Okay, yo, this just happened, but then later on in like 3 episodes, you'll go like, oh shit. This is now it's this thing again, and it rewards you for having paid attention and remembering, right? So yeah, I mean, huge. But then we end up having ourselves come back. We end up playing the tapes, right, with the tape recorder the tape recorder with the tape player that just so happens to be there, and you know who it was. You know who it was. Bada bing, bada boom. Give me a drum roll. Give me 400 drum rolls. Give me a. What am I doing? It was actually the man, the myth, the legend, the train conductor. Oh my god, remember the one that T invited onto the train? That is crazy. And you know what's interesting? T invited them onto the train. The brother, like the family member of H, right? Which is very interesting. I don't think that was necessarily planned. However, the fact that the train conductor, that T, the train guy, ends up bringing over is the one who killed H, I think is interesting. Maybe not all of the letters get along. I'm just saying, there's the possibility that some of the letters maybe just don't get along, which, But anyways, H is suddenly alive because, of course, why would they ever be dead? And that means that Steam has successfully won the challenge for their team, which means that they are now safe, which is pretty epic. Now there's a little bit of a debate. Should they have been safe? Yes, I think. Because okay, technically it was just who found their capability to be safe first won the challenge. Okay, now the problem here is that technically nobody won the challenge. No, sorry, nobody won the challenge, but I mean that like nobody heard the challenge because the challenge wasn't necessarily spoken out loud, right? It was just like, yo, the contestants found he to be dead, and then they're doing the challenge, right? So we didn't necessarily hear the rules of the challenge before it happened, right? Which means that like it could be both, it doesn't really matter. The train ends up going off script because the conductor is no longer there, but they just happen to land at Corey land perfectly, which is super epic. And then the other team is up for Elam. I think that like even if you can debate, oh, but Steam didn't have the tape, at the end of the day Steam got the tape, and then the person who played the tape and showed off the information right at the end of it was Gex Disc, right? Which is also on that team. So even though we're giving the credit to Steam, I think the only other argument that you could make would be to give it to Gex Disc the credit. But even if you give Gex Disc the credit, they're still on the team, right? Waiting the other teams out for Edom. Who gets out on this? I think it's Joe Bird's time to go. I'm not gonna lie. They don't do anything. We directly state that they don't do anything. Small Shield Potion and Cookie Milk at least were useful to the interaction. And Wario just kind of... Okay, Wario didn't do much in this episode. However, at least it was funny. I think Joe Bird just wasn't very funny. And you can see that I don't think we're writing too much here with Joe Bird. Like, Joe Bird had the whole thing, oh, you're like about also being from the past show and everything, right? Which is more interesting. However, the thing about it is that like it's not actually that interesting a plotline as it sounds in theory, because what it actually is just you going to Cookie Milk or to freaking like Medkit and going, yo, isn't it weird how this happened? Yeah, it is weird that this happened. Do we know how this happened? No, we don't know how this happened. Oh well, right, and then that's the end of that because they don't have any solution. Like they don't have any way to investigate actually further. So even though it sounds like an interesting, or it actually isn't really. I think it's Joe Bird's time to go. We have very long credits this time. They're very, very long. However, I will admit that it is very fun to see the images of them at Coreyland itself, right, at the actual attractions, quote unquote, that there are. Which is fun, and then some of them aren't even one of them is just an image of Luigi, but okay. We end up having Corey be mad. Everybody's watching the TV. For some reason, Hexagon's extremely upset. What Hexagon? Don't you know the future, bro? Now this bro. I don't know. We like 2 episodes ago, we had the whole situation with like, yo, this is a thing that's happening. However, suddenly there's like time traveling shenanigan. It's just not really important anymore. Hexagon's now chilling, watching TV with the rest of them. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, look, there's a lot of time at the end of the day because like this series is 11 episodes rather than the 7 that the other one was, right? However, I'm doubting it a little bit. But yeah, I think that's all I can realistically say about this episode, though. Who did I predict to get out? Yeah, the Joe Bird. So let's see. Let's hope for the best. Now heading into episode 6, which is titled "Let's Get Down to Business." Let's go. Alright, so that is the 6th episode of Flesh 2, which officially marks roughly the halfway point of the season. You know, there's about, how many more episodes left? Like 5 more episodes after this, right? Which means that we have crossed the halfway point, and my microphone might have cut itself off. But, Yeah, we have here. It's a relatively big episode. There's a lot of interesting things to say about it. So let's chat about it. So first of all, our contestants start off here doing a karaoke because that's that's fun. They always do this. This episode doesn't have the auto subtitles. Rip to me specifically. I'm the only person that watches the Object Show episodes with the auto subtitles on. But rip to me specifically. That's an oof. But we end up having a couple of things. Wario ends up dancing. We end up having our intro, which again, I don't. There's so little to say about the intro. Usually talk about the intro for a while, but like genuinely, I'm like try to think of something to say about this intro, like in multiple episodes, and I was just being like, I don't know. I do not know what to tell you about this intro. There's nothing interesting about it. But we immediately send ourselves to the elimination arena, the elimination intro. Now we can talk about this actually quite a bit. So I'm not gonna lie, this show, considering this is a show that like proves itself where like nothing is off limits, so do anything, to do everything, right? The fact that the elimination time has remained entirely sort of untouched in this season is immensely interesting because of course in the last season it was a technically integral part of the lore because the elimination time, like the singer eventually got fed up with it and was like, I don't want to do this, and then they dipped, which makes for an interesting situation because it's like, yo, I mean, we're doing this, but we're also we're not, right? But then here they're back. How I mean, of course they do screw up technically the song every time with the coughing at the end, but that just seems like more part of it more than it's a like a it's a protest, like they're doing it correctly, which is it's interesting because I don't really know. But either way, have our elimination 47 votes. We've roughly gone up ever since the 30 range, but in general, we kind of still going down. And here, the eliminated contestant ended up being none other than Joe Bird with 22 votes. I got it correctly. It seems like I'm starting to maybe just maybe start to catch the drift of what this show's doing. Okay, we end up having a couple of hexagons, bit like did stuff, end up getting grabbed. So Wario ends up grabbing a time machine, teleports back to the dinosaur age, as you do. Cookie Milk ends up getting the diary, Hexagon's diary, which apparently has some. Okay, I don't know what it has on it, to be honest, that makes Cookie Milk's reaction, because, of course, we know that Hexagon's a pretty interesting fella. We thought Hexagon was going to be the villain character, at least that was what was teased, a couple of episodes ago, episode 3-ish. However, maybe we're not doing that. It's interesting. I guess we have to see if Hexagon rejoins. That's kind of the wonder, because that's the one thing that could possibly break the start. So I feel like that might be what we're waiting to see if Hexagon is actually trying to do mysterious things. Then we don't have to see it, but we do see that there's a time machine. It's right there, right? So like it's public info. So I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, Joe Bird eventually gets out. Goodbye, Joe Bird. There's nothing. Yeah. And then eventually Hexagon starts complaining, yo, where the hell is my shit? Remember, they can watch the show, which is, bro, like, yeah, you can watch the show. There's a television. That's probably where you are. I mean, that's where you were watching TV the other time. So how do you not know that the fella got it? Like, they said it in the show. Were you not watching the show? Were you guys not watching the show? But yeah, Hexagon is off going crazy. And then we have ourselves the main plot line of the episode. So the main plot line of the episode is the show is running out of money. H had some life savings left to keep it around. However, we need money ASAP. So the challenge is make money. Person who makes the most money wins immunity because it's now individual challenge. There is no more teams to display because there's only 6 people left, right? So okay, interesting. However, of course, as soon as I say the challenge and turning into paper, one thing obviously props up to mind. It's BFB29. BFB29 is, of course, the very infamous BFB episode where it's titled SOS, I think, Save Our Show, right? Which ends up being the big old episode where they run out of money and they desperately need to find ways to make money. They all fail until Flower's like business loan or whatever ends up being the only thing that she has, and she was gonna use it for the business, but then she puts it in and eventually makes Flower win. B&B, right? Which is infamous episode because okay, it's an excellent challenge. To be fair, to that episode of B&B, it's an extremely good challenge. It has high stakes, it's interesting, and it's fun, right? However, it's an extremely good challenge placed at the worst possible time because, you're placing it right before the finale and you made one of the two finale contestants literally save the entire show from collapsing, which means they have to win. That was the most rigged BFB like final voting ever, right? Probably in the history of anything. However, like, yeah, as far as a challenge, yeah. Do I approve of doing challenges that are in other shows? Again, in certain situations, of course, I would call a little bit unoriginal. Like if a serious show, a bigger show did it. However, in a case like this, I mean, like this show is such an unbelievably different vibe to that it's like, yo, you can do similar challenges and it's fine. Like I don't necessarily mind, which is interesting. So yeah, it's cool. Like you can go do what you do. Then we have ourselves a challenge. Of course, while we're individual teams, we don't necessarily need to be in, of course, singular. Like we can team up, and a lot of people end up going in duos. Steam ends up teaming up with the freaking drunk guy who's I say the name differently every time. Drunchy, Scruffy, Scrunch. It's a combination. It's one of those. I think it's one. I don't know. Scruffy sounds like a dog. There's no way it was Drunchy. Drunchy. I don't think it was Drunchy either. Whatever. But Steam goes like, yo, let's go to the Valve headquarters, sneak in, and then we can take the money from their vault because they have a shit ton of money. Okay, cool. Question: why do you need to sneak into Valve? You are Steam. You were their child. What did you? I'm sorry. Wait, you can't go into Valve. You don't like. You're not allowed in there. What do you mean? Were you abandoned? Were you disowned? Did Valve disown you? Surely Valve, like that. You what? How do you exist? Did Valve not make you? How are you not allowed in the Valve headquarters? Now that is a question. That it's not a relevant question, but it's interesting, isn't it? Like, wait, Valve isn't like Steam isn't allowed at Valve? What? Like, that's crazy, huh? Why do you need to sneak in? Like, I mean, it's not okay. Maybe if you're gonna steal money, of course, like, okay, you can sneak in, but like, you could surely just like you can get in and then eventually sneak in from there. Like sneaking to get in is really interesting. Like I don't. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. But anyways, Wario eventually ends up going into the computer using a machine that lets you do just that. And then the mini show ends up doing that. So Wario is officially in the computer, which means that they can do stuff in the internet and all that jazz, which is interesting. Gex is just running a lemonade stand. The Gex disc and just eventually agrees to let Cookie Milk join them because, I don't know, two more than one. I mean, to be fair, if Gex disc calculates that it's a really bad idea, if they can get another person to also fail with them, then it's theoretically possible that, it'd be better. Steam and Scrunchy ends up going inside. It was not. What was bro's name? I'm freaking. Oh gosh, blah, blah, blah. I am the dumb. I am the dumb. But yeah, they go into Valve. Eventually, Drunchi ends up getting the guards' attention, despite Steam telling them not to, because bro just cannot handle staying silent for more than 1 minute. They get into the ventilation system. Then Wario ends up making a shit ton of money. They make the money. How does Wario make the money? Well, Wario makes the money because at the end of the day, what is Wario good at? Wario is a good trickster and is very good at stealing money, as having hoarding wealth that he has stolen and accumulated, and he's a trickster at the end of it. A lot of the time, All right, in the games, the Mario Tennis and stuff, we act out Wario and Waluigi as this type of like failing duo, right? Who was really bad at tricks. But no, they're feared for a reason. Is because they are the cheaters. They end up getting outsmarted by Mario and Luigi most of the time, but they are the cheaters against pretty much anybody else. They will manage to successfully make their way over. And Wario here has an excellent challenge for him. At the end of the day, stealing money might as well be his second name, right? So he proceeds to get a smart idea. He advertises to Elon Musk over the internet to have the Wario coin or whatever, and Elon Musk buys it. Man, this is 2023. Okay, Elon Musk was different. I mean, he wasn't that different. He was like mildly different. But eventually they end up buying it, and Wario has stolen all of the money, right? So, good job to Wario. Then we have the friggin' the mini shield. Okay, so the mini shield, I don't know what was the mini shield even trying to do. Mini shield was like doing a job around the city, and then they meet like the health freaking spray from Fortnite, and then they end up getting in a relationship or whatever. And it's like the joke, haha, they marry and have a wife. Right? I have a wife. But yeah, so they do interesting. Then the lemonade stand, of course, it's not working because you place the lemonade stand in the grassy fields where nobody except the contestants live. So it's not great. But then their blessing, CEO business guy ends up buying lemonade. He likes the lemonade, and he decides to promote him to lemonade CEO of the company. What does that mean? Impossible to know. However, they do good. um, and they eventually made $1 quadrillion. They shoot the guy, right? And then they end up getting promoted to CEO because the real CEO is dead. So they go from lemonade CEO to real CEO by just virtue of there not being anybody else there. Which, I mean, I guess valid, technically correct. I love the gag of them dropping into the Team Fortress 2 development area, and there's not a single soul there because the joke is that Valve didn't work on Team Fortress 2. That's hilarious. I still don't know how Steam doesn't have access to Valve headquarters, but like other than that, yeah. They go down to the vault, and in the vault are a bunch of golden pans. Of course, Valve's money is on CS:GO skins. I thought that was a joke. I don't know if that is a joke, but I thought that'd be fun. Oh, yo, Valve's own money because of CS2 skins, right? But anyway, Scrunchy still is a big fan of it. We end up having I think the Larry movie gets mentioned. It's these passing one-liners. It's like it's smart. I enjoy it. I think it's fun. But eventually Wario's like, how the hell do I get out of the computer? And then McAfee antivirus drops in. For real. This is not the sentence I was expecting to say in Object Catchup. McAfee is here to play. It's here to do the business. And then they end up being like, yo, you committed cybercrime, so me, the antivirus, is gonna destroy you. Wario ends up escaping, and then they find the screen and decide to jump out of the screen, and they manage to just about survive over McAfee, winning the money. Good job, Wario. You are the GOAT. The Minish were just having an argument with their wife now until they forgot that the challenge was ending. So it's like, oh shit, I have to get back. Then the chocolate milk and Gex, however, unfortunately, there's protesters because it just so happens when you murder the CEO, it doesn't go down well. Which means that they have officially lost all of their funds, all of their assets. Because for I don't know, they kind of kept the money in the cash register, but yeah, they end up being firmly up for elimination. Because they just don't have any money. Eventually, Gex tries to gets the box and throws throws the cookies, cookie milk, out of the building. To at least get a little bit of an advantage on them in case, which I mean, fair enough. So eventually we have here the results of the challenge. Wario wins. There's really not that much to it. Wario absolutely destroys the competition. He got like $236 billion, which was probably Elon Musk's net worth at the time. I'm sure they Googled it. Everybody else gets like what 100K is what the friggin' Steam fellas got. Even though you gotta remember that it would be have to be split both ways, because one of them would be safe. So I don't know which one of them would count as having gotten the money. But yeah, it's about 20K for the sealed. The 236 billion for Wario, and Chocolate Milk gets no. I keep calling it Chocolate Milk. Why am I calling it Chocolate Milk? It's because there's a character Chocolate Milk. I'm sure. There's in another show. Cookie Milk. The box with from Dead Guess this also has nothing in it, to be honest. So yeah. And then eventually the money's running out. Everybody's dying. Oh no! But yeah, H manages to make it to the bank with, and I don't think we'll have this budget problem again. We have $236 billion to work with. So yeah, Wario wins, and the rest of them are up for elimination. However, it's going to be a contestant vote. It's going to be a contestant vote this time, because we're doing a rejoin. Who would the contestants vote out? I'm feeling like Mini Shield has been very not hasn't been utilized that much. They kind of haven't been interacting with people all that much. So I'm kind of feeling like they could get eliminated. Although Gex Disc is probably risking it now because of that. Okay, I Mini Shoot feels too easy. I'm gonna say Gex Disc is what the contestants would vote out. I wouldn't like it, but I think they're gonna do it because Cookie Milk is probably gonna vote them off now, and maybe somebody else is going to get out. Like that's my idea. And then the rejoin. Everybody else gets to say their word and why they can rejoin. Hexagon doesn't really care. Medkit is here to shows off a trick and spawns the fellas with the spell, which is cool. If you know what, if that works, that's fine. If that actually works against Medkit in the show, that would be high. I'd actually be very happy with that. And then we end up having the more fellas, Partridge in a Pear Tree, obviously going to be one of the favorites to possibly rejoin because they were the first out, and first out to first in is a rule that a lot of people follow. And Hexagon also, with their whole madly mischievous, villainous side, and also the diary and everything being in the show, might also have a competition. However, I out of these people that gets eliminated, I gotta say, I think Medkit rejoins. I think Medkit. Because while a lot of people don't like Medkit, I feel like a lot of people do, and they're an OG, and they had a cool scene here for the rejoin convincing. So I think in this case, I have to predict that Medkit is going to be coming back. Let's hope for the best. I would enjoy that happening at least. Yeah, that is all cool. What is our post-credit scene? I don't remember. Oh, Rapper Bar. Oh yeah, Rapper Bar. Rapper Bar was the character that was also in the voting screen as a joke at the end of it. But you can't. I don't think you can actually vote for Rapper Bar. And here in the post-credit scene, you end up having Rapper Bar. Wait a minute, Rapper Bar. It sounds like it's a rapper doing bars. Yo, I'm a rapper in a spitting bar. Let's go. What am I saying? Have you ever noticed how much shit I say? I just say bullshit like all the time. Like I just do that. Have you ever noticed? Like if you're listening to this, I don't know who you are if you're listening to this, but like, what are you like? Do you agree? Be honest. Do you agree? Do I talk shit like half the time and talk about the show like for 20% of the time? Sometimes I feel like I do that. I talk about, oh, so you see, there's this philosophical concept called the Luigi's Mansion, and it's like, where what? It's like stuff, But yeah, Rapper Bar has officially died. Apparently, 2021 to 2023. Which is interesting. I'm gonna get 2021 because the Flesh was 2022 and this show's 2023. So presumably is Rapper Bar from Christmas Clash, maybe from Christmas Clash, because in Christmas Clash that was the 2021 show. So then if they started off 2021 and they officially died here in Flesh 2, it'd be 2021, 2023. That maybe. Then maybe that's my guess because otherwise I don't really know. Alright, it is time. Why am I saying like Wario? It's time for episode 7, which is titled The Great Strategy. Alright then, what is the great strategy? Let's watch it, let's talk about it. Let's bada bing bada boom bada da. Alright, so that is episode 7 of Flesh 2, The Great Strategy. So we have ourselves another little episode. We are making our way through. We are taking step by step, making it to the end. Alright, I don't know what to say. But anyway, the eliminate contestants, they're chilling over there because they get to be in a grass field rather than in the Britain. So they're like, "Yo, isn't this just so epic? Right? Isn't this just so excitingly amazing?" Right? Which I mean, fair enough. I must agree. Until eventually we end up having ourselves go into the rejoin. You have a couple of gags, like the gag of it being the BFDI. And stuff. And then we end up having the rejoin time. Of course, I did say yesterday. No, yesterday, I did say in the last segment that I was interested in how the elimination time team was completely unchanged for 6 episodes of the entire of the series. Like, because I find it interesting that like it really didn't get changed, right? But it turns out that in this case, it did get changed forcibly to rejoin. However, again, it was just kind of a joke. Other than that, it's still completely standard. So I guess in this timeline, because I'm presuming that we're in a different, like the alternate timeline, dictated from Flesh, that from the ending of Flesh, that like in this case, with a guy perfectly content with doing it. No idea what was in the diary, but Cookie Milk was still reading it. Hexagon looks at it and eventually flashes them the memory loss with the whole sciencey tool. And then we have ourselves the rejoin. Who end up rejoining? It is actually none other than with 16 votes. Medkit ends up rejoining here with 16 votes. Compared to Muscle Man's 15. Very close. I was surprised at how many votes Muscle Man got. I guess people kind of think of them as funny, but I mean, I didn't really care about Muscle Man. However, yeah, Medkit ends up rejoining here with 16 votes. Hexagon ran away after not getting enough votes. Which is interesting. You see, they like want to take over the world. Maybe the gag is that they're bad. I'm still trying to calculate exactly what is going to happen because, like, of course, to have a big finale and have a big thing happen, however, we really not set up anything. Like, we're not doing any of that stuff right here, right? Which is why it's like, why, how? Like, what is going to be what's going to be the narrative for stuff like finales and stuff, right? Because the finales are long, the last 2 episodes are long. So it's like, how, like, what are we doing? So I'm trying to calculate that, and it's like, Hexagon sounds like a villain, but at the same time, they're so bad at it. Like, and I think that might be the gag. The gag that they're a really bad villain, comparatively speaking. Like, they just flop massively. And they're like embarrassing. But other than that, I don't really know. Medkit joined, yay! Shout out Medkit. And then we have ourselves Wii U gamepads where you can vote for the character to get out. It turns out that Mini Shield does, in fact, get out with 4 votes compared to anybody else. Now, I'm going to admit this was expected, I think, honestly. It was absolutely the idea that I just psyched myself out. I'm going to be honest. I psyched myself out in this one. It made the most sense for Mini Shield to go home. Nobody really interacted with Mini Shield. That was kind of the thing, right? Like, nobody really interacted with them. However, the reason why I psyched myself out and I said that Gex Disc was going to get eliminated, the reason why I said that was because I was expecting it to have been an opportunity. It was like, oh, okay, so here I can eliminate a fan favorite or like a safer character because the contestants are voting it and not the viewers, right? So that way it's a way to get out somebody that's stronger in the game necessarily, rather than Miniature, which I think was relatively weak on the contestant side, was also weak on the viewer side. So yeah, however, I'm incorrect, which is, I mean, yeah, I'm just wrong. Then we have ourselves the challenge. So Epic Gamer, okay, it was apparently is residing in the house of the host. They formed a man cave. They got kicked out of the house for not paying rent, and are doing that. First of all, I'm just gonna say yes. I'm okay. I'm just be honestly out of just complete morbid curiosity. I'm gonna keep the video in the video. Okay, but yes, there is technically NSFW in the video because of the poster in the background. I'm just gonna point that out. I don't know if we've reached that scene yet. However, I don't know. Close your eyes or whatever. But like it's interesting. I'm just gonna keep in the video out of more curiosity because this video doesn't seem to have anything going up against it. So I'm gonna see, does YouTube actually not catch it? I'm curious. If YouTube does, then like I'm fucked. But I guess we'll find out the hard way. But yeah, Epic Gamer eventually apparently has a $5,000 computer to play Roblox. Steam is obviously disappointed because you're Steam, and you want people to play Steam games. But eventually, Out of this troll, they end up getting everybody to go to Doomspire Break Battle. They kidnap everybody. They bring the Doomspire Break Battle. The host eventually gets incapacitated for a little bit by E, and you end up having our challenge, which is an Epic Gamer hosted challenge. It's simply Doomspire Break Battle. Form duos. Two people will be safe. The pretty much it's what they're playing Doomspire Break Battle. You don't know how Doomspire Break Battle. You get a bunch of weapons and you have to shoot the tower. You have to destroy the tower so that the other people's tower, so that way they fall and they can't respawn because the tower has spawn points within it. Okay, that's how the Inspire Break Battle works. And they end up going into duos. The duos being made end up being Cookie Milk and Wario. They ends up being end up being Scrungy and friggin' Steam, and then it ends up being Gex, Disc, and Medkit. Okay, those are the duos. It's relatively new duos in terms of like people that haven't talked too much to each other, which I think is rather nice. And then we have the episode. So to be fair to this episode's bold in a way that I think is rather risky because like the hardest things to really animate seem to be fight scenes, right? Fight scenes are complicated because they require a lot of additional movement. It's a lot of pretty fast movement, and just animating people talking is obviously easier because you need one talk frame to talk, and to fight you need like freaking 10 movements at the very minimum, right? Which is why it's super high action, super high intense, super good, but you cannot make a show that is only fight scenes, realistically speaking, because that's way too hard, right? That is way too difficult. So it's interesting, especially if the show wants to keep up its facade as low effort, even though it's actually really high effort, right? It's like this show it's a high effort show. This show's a lie, but like yeah, so doing a channel like this that's directly just one gigantic fight scene is pretty impressive. And I do enjoy it. So Steam and Scrungy end up being attacking. I still don't remember what bro's name is, but they end up going in with attacking because, of course, Scrungy is very bazooka, right? But eventually, Steam's plan barely works, but unfortunately, Gex respawns at the bottom, which is just bad luck. So they end up struggling. But yeah, Gexhead eventually manages to psych him out. Cookie Milk and Wario is possibly the biggest failure of a duo in the history of duos. I have never seen two people do this bad of a job ever since I watched Home Alone. I'm not gonna lie. Wow, these two are so abysmal. Oh my god. It's like Wario comes in with 400 plans that suck ass, and Cookie goes like, "No, I cannot trust you because I can't trust you." That's not the voice that Cookie Milk has, but I can't trust you to win the challenge anymore. And then you proceed to go out there to get fucking bullied into death like 5 times in a row. Like, these two are just so bad. And eventually, after Steam ended, Trinity gets tired of them. They end up just being like, yeah, I mean, I'll just go destroy the tower. Like they're literally defenseless with how bad they are. So they end up losing. While the other team ends up just kind of chilling. I mean, Gexhead and the medkit don't really need to do anything because we're just kind of distracted overall, right? So yeah. So after these two get firmly deleted, I do like the gag. I do like the streaming gags of having the camera in the toilet corner from time to time, and the fact that it gets grabbed by Wario to beat up Cookie Milk after Cookie Milk complains about him. I find it's really fun. Or like the donation sounds being done from time to time, right? Like those are cool. However, yeah. Then Medkit ends up trying to sneak in. It doesn't really work that much. Well, it kind of works. They run but down. They run down to the middle. They infiltrate the base. In the meanwhile, the Drenching and Gex had go have a crazy battle. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit unfortunate. For a show that keeps referencing itself, I'm surprised that we didn't reference Gex karate moves. We learned the way of the karate a couple of episodes ago, and we destroyed the scrunchie with it, right? So here we could have used that, and it would have been fun. But now we end up having the sword fight, and eventually, after a very long, drawn out sword fight, Scrunchie ends up getting defeated by Gexhead after they get distracted. Because basically, what happens is Steam tries to, of course, just freaking shoot the medkit so that they die. However, the problem is that medkit manages to dodge it. Medkit manages to clutch dodge, which means that this rocket launcher ends up hitting their own tower, and then the tower collapses, which is very unfortunate there. Of course, we're doing a mild simplification of Doomspire Big Battle, because one shot of a tower is not going to actually destroy the tower. You need more like 20. You need so many shots to actually destroy a tower in Doomspire. But fair enough. And after the challenge ends, Epic Gamer gets them back, and eventually host decides to play Pinata with E, which, are very valid. And then everybody else is up for elimination. Cookie Milk, Scrumpy, Steam, and Wario. I don't know who the fuck is going home. I really don't. So, Cookie Milk and Wario fail the challenge abysmally. Like, no, they just fail. They do not do good. They argue with each other. They have terrible ideas, but they're funny. They're a funny duo because they have opposite energy but achieve the same outcome, right? Like, Wario is super high energy, Cookie Milk is relatively low energy, but at the end of the day, they're both the same thing, which is extremely stupid, right? So I think they both survive. And I think Scrumpy probably survives because at least bro's cool. And it's a challenge not for him. Like, battle, right? Which means that, unfortunately, I think it's time to go. I think it's time to go here for Steam. I don't see the other ones getting eliminated. So Steam, both, we already saw that Steam might not be in the most liked category because Steam ends up kind of like getting pretty high up in votings for it being kind of more snarky, more mean, more sassy, I guess, in a way, right? But not only that, they also do lose their team to challenge by shooting the thing, while having ego about it as well, right? So I think it's time for Steam to go. Unfortunately, I mean, I like Steam, I want to see them around. However, in this case, I think my prediction has got to be Steam compared to the other ones. So yeah, apparently Flesh is in hiatus. Oh no, Flesh hiatus. See you in late October. When was this really? Is this 2023? I think it still is. I think it started in 2020. These episodes come out quickly. Like, hold on. Let me actually, just gonna curious. See you in late October. Wait, late October, premiere 7/3. That's a hiatus. 1 month. Wait, 1 month is a hiatus. Yeah, you see, these episodes get done very fast. Wait a minute. This telling me that 1 month is a hiatus. I was like, oh my god, long break. Wait, hold on. Then how long is the average wait time? Hold on. Flesh 2 episode 6 released in August 12th, September 3rd. Wait, so it already. Wait. Wait a minute. Wait. So the average wait time of the episode is longer than the wait time of the hiatus episode. Wait. Uh, I'm mad sure. What? Or are they going to a hiatus until late October, and then late October they start making the episode, and then it takes a while? That's the only thing that I can currently imagine. Because how does that be? Can I just check when episode? Yeah, let me just check when episode 8 really. No, I mean, now I'm curious. Now I literally have to know. Is it October 20? No, it was October. What is it? Huh? What? This isn't that big of a deal. Okay, well, all right. Flash is in good. Guys, my bad. Flash is in hiatus. But hey, it is the way that it is. Okay, anyways, I've gotten distracted enough. I think it's time to officially get into the thick of it there by chatting about episode 8, which is the 8th episode, because there's no 2.5. Why didn't they go to Finland? They should have gone to Finland. Should have had episode 2.5 of Flesh 2, where they go to friggin' like Ontario. Alright, let's go. Episode 8, not Christmas Clash. It was released on late October, so my presumption is that it's Halloween. Let's see. Let's talk about it. Let's do that stuff. Bam. Alright, so I watched episode 8 of Flesh 2, known as Not Christmas Clash. Why is it not Christmas Clash? Well, because we're doing a holiday episode. However, we're not doing a holiday episode for Christmas, because we're doing a holiday episode for Halloween. Because as you know, when it's Halloween, everything turns orange. It is just one of the factual requirements of Halloween. Therefore, we end up having Halloween cookie milk. Is pretty excited about this, which I think is rather interesting yet again. I mean, just because you're in a Christmas competition. Okay, I don't know how Christmas Clash works. I don't know if Christmas Clash is literally taking, like, does it take place entirely during Christmas, or is it just like a name? Like, is that just a name that it gets given to it? Because I mean, maybe, and they're not doing stuff during Christmas, because I mean they do that all the time. But yeah, Medkit apparently doesn't celebrate Christmas, doesn't like Christmas because they're a scaredy cat who gets scared super easily. So they get yeeted away, and then we have ourselves, I think, the elimination. Indeed we do. We have a couple of guys. Oh, I really like decorating the nuclear reactor, like bro. But we have ourselves the elimination. Yet again, we do have a technically variated elimination time theme. Every episode since I originally mentioned it has had a different elimination time theme, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, this one has just some Halloween's effect over it. But yeah, no, yeah, actually, the guy in the elimination time theme hasn't ever changed their quote properly, which I think is very interesting. Ease shit end up being the prizes for this episode. 40 votes. The number is gradually going down, which I think is unfortunate. It's very slowly. Ever since it hit the random peak of 54, slowly dropping down back to around what its average was of 30s. It currently is 40, but the episode was like 42, and then it was 44. So we're going down, which I think is unfortunate. But the way that it is. The elimination ends up getting interrupted by trick-or-treaters like 1 million times until H eventually finds a contraption that sends them to the underworld, and then we end up having the eliminated contestant B with 24 votes. Cookie milk. What? Nah. Something's up. 24-6 is a level of incredible mismatch that is exaggerated. Like, nah, really? Why? What did you do? I mean, you were like mildly annoying. You dissed Wario, but Wario was the first safe. Like, Wario's more charming. Nah, what? Something's up, bro. Something's up. Somebody did it. Something's up here with this fella. I I don't know. You know what? I don't know. What could it have been? Can I look at? Hold on. Let me. Do you vote in for? How did this happen? Like, I'm so interested. Like, why? I don't know. That like it's that level where it feels like there has to have been some like sort of situation where it's like somebody was like, "Yo, we gotta get cookie milk out." Yo, okay, you wanna hear bullshit ass theory that is 100% wrong? You wanna hear it? Okay, because I'm just like that. Okay, theorizing time. If I'm not mistaken, there was a new person in the special thanks, okay, called like Eli Redacted, all right, and they were credited for I think the assets for Cookie Milk, okay, Eli Squared, sorry, not Eli Redacted, and they're now in the special thanks, which they weren't before. So I'm just gonna do this debate that maybe it's something to do with that. Not necessarily that like that like they're rapper, but like maybe they replace somebody, and then it's not good. I don't know otherwise because I don't really know how the hell. But anyway, goodbye Cookie Milk. Steam is safe, which I mean I don't mind. Steam actually ends up being seems really funny in this episode. I don't know. I like Steam's like sort of mild mean, but also super calm. Like Steam, she's nice, but also not. Like it's kind of she's nice, but she's not like overwhelmingly nice. Like she's clearly got the personalities of a person, which I think is like quite cool. But the challenge is a haunted house. Nope, did that already. The challenge is a costume contest. Is very simple. And then we eventually rate it. You have 2 hours apparently to find the best costume that you possibly can. And then the fellas are off to the races. So um, let's let's go person by person. These ones are always a little bit complicated because the way that these episodes have work in terms of their chronology is we have a dispersion of people, right? And then this dispersion of people end up sort of causing there to be like three different scenes, and then we cut up from one to the next to the next. So it's kind of difficult to when I'm doing a recap because I want to cover one section entirely, but then it's like difficult to cover one section entirely because there's other sessions like sort of that kind of half intertwine with it, right? This is a writing style that this show has been portraying relatively recently. I mean, in the making money challenge, right? Like it's very similar, like we end up seeing the person to the person to the person to the person. You don't see it as much in the team challenges because there's only two teams, right? So it ends up being a little bit more coordinated. But in this case, you get to probably see Gex Disc was gonna do something until eventually they get a call from some sort of ultra spy government to ask them to go to the TF2 map to take down, because they were going to do a thing that is going to explode the state of New Jersey. They're developing an evil scientist. We need a Gex disc for ultra epic Gex to get there. So they are on their way. In the meantime, Steam ends up going over to the mall and starts picking a costume. You get offered many dresses. However, Steam proceeds to spend literally the entirety of the allotted time trying to pick a costume. Which is incredible until they eventually pick out the perfect costume, which I mean, it does end up getting a 10 out of 10, but like we end up spending the entire time picking, and the store lady just proceeds to get procedurally more annoyed because she has to be there to help out, but like there's nobody else. In the meantime, Scrunchy is out here until they meet their brethren, who is, what the hell is their brethren? Rum. Or it's another drink, right? So then they have this whole shebang, this whole backstory, okay? That is so bullshit that we even laughed during it. It's been a while since we had the laugh cut off. Like we had it a lot, and like back in the first couple of episodes with like the Adam Sandler or whatever. But here we've had less of it. But like, bro, um, what is the storyline? So the parents died or something, but then they were like okay. So Rum and Scrunchy are twins, apparently. Okay, and then what happens is that a parent, according to this guy, I don't know if this guy's reliable, but according to this guy, they wanted the perfect child to carry on the legacy or whatever. So they decided to give all of the good genes to Scrunchy, okay? So they do that. What am I saying? But for them to be able to give all of the good genes to Scrunchy, they need to select them, and that means that they need to have twins, so that way they have somewhere to send the other ones. I think is the TOTR what happened. So they're twins, but it's specifically made so that Scrunchy is the good one, and then this rum bottle is the bad one, which is such a story. Nah, what is this? I just like to confirm. You can actually confirm it here that yes, I was still unsure if like until like last episode, I was kind of unsure if Scrunchy was a voice lines character. They are. Wow, and the fact I didn't realize. You know why I didn't realize? You want to know why I didn't realize? It's because of the train station line. It's because back in the train episode, when Scrunchy said the line about the train station, I was like, there is no way that just so happens to be a clip. Like, I was like, that's a voice line. That's insane. Right? So I was like, this has to be voice acted though. Right? So that was my idea. However, it's not. That's actually just a voice line. I guess repeated here as well, which is crazy. That is wild. I'm not gonna lie. Like that is. I'm mad shook at that. I'm proper mad shook. So yeah, that is cool. But eventually they end up having an epic battle, right? Because apparently this guy burned them all down, right? So basically, because of course in the challenge, apparently in the challenge of the Skyball challenge, they end up falling down, everybody's burning, and everybody dies, and everybody eventually gets recovered. But there's a major misunderstanding here from Rum. It's that they can get recovered. That is the extremely simple misunderstanding that Scrunchy isn't capable of giving, and nobody else is. And Steam doesn't really give it properly, but like this guy is pretty much goes like, "Yo, you murdered them," which I mean, okay, fair enough from their perspective. To be fair, like that, yes, from their perspective, that makes perfect sense as to why you would be upset at this. However, they can just get revived, so it's not that big of a deal. Like that's the simple matter of the fact that like it's not the end of the world if you can get recovered. I understand why this guy it is, because this guy isn't aware of the recovery, and this guy probably can't get reasonably recovered. Okay, I mean they probably can in the terms of like, oh yo, if you ask H to recover this guy, probably can, right? However, in the like more normal sense, I think that this guy, yeah, truly just wouldn't get recovered. So I must admit, pretty interesting. But yeah, at the end, doing a battle until Steam eventually comes in and distracts them, and then Rum dies. So yeah, now Wario and Medkit. So Medkit gets left behind by the fellas going to the mall. Okay, by Steam and Scrunchy. So that means that because there's a Steam mobile, which is really funny. But which means that Medkit kind of has to go along with Wario. Convinces Wario to bring them along on the bike to go fetch the costume. They go to the costume store, however, they crash into the costume store with the bike, right? Which makes some people upset, but like, yo, we have to do this, Wario. Right, so then they go fetch out some costumes, which are pretty okay. Wario doesn't decides to not go with the pirate costume. In the meantime, Medkit ends up getting a cowboy costume, which for some reason has a working gun with it, right? So then, while testing out the gun, which seemed like a toy gun, but it's actually a real gun, shoots the manager of the store, and then the policemen are coming with bisexual lighting. So that is what those two are doing. Then Gex Disc ends up continuing an adventure, has a couple of battles. Yet again, I find this stuff really impressive. I'm not gonna lie. When like a character like Gex Disc is interacting like this with characters from a game, directly battling, punching them, dodging them, like it's really impressive. I think that this stuff is really difficult, right? In a way where it's like you just don't expect it, you know. Like I remember one of the most impressive videos of Flesh to me was the Minecraft Zoo, because there was so much like being done subtly to make it blend in properly, and this does that but with TF2, right, which I think is really interesting. But guess this, eventually get over to the middle of the landscape, to the base after defeating some fellas, where there is the evil scientist, whatever guy, who really wants to destroy New Jersey with a rocket for some reason. I don't know. By the way, one thing I don't think I ever pointed out, the fact that Coreyland was in West Virginia just doesn't matter. I thought that was gonna be like a plot detail. That, oh, West Virginians were flash out. Well, no, but I'm not. It's just not. But then yeah, that's a whole gigantic debate. Let me check. Hold on, let me remember. But yeah, I guess eventually ends up having the fight, finding the fella, the scientist behind it all, and then they have this new enemy that's attacking them called Tumori. Okay, so that's cool. But Tumori ends up kind of flopping down on the floor and dying. So I guess they're just immediately able to shut down the rocket, destroy the guy, and then eventually has to escape real quick because Tumori expands. Oh my god, it's like a tumor. So they expand, eventually activates a different rocket, a self-explosion bomb that was on the thing, on the facility, and explodes everything. Guess this barely survived. Good job, guess this. Accidentally has a costume because they have like the whole spy suit, whatever. Right. I'd end up looking pretty swag with it. Wario and Medkit end up over running away from the police in the middle of the road. They're doing a road run. And we end up having, how do we get rid of the police? We need to, I don't know, shoot them. Like, there's no way to get rid of them otherwise. But Medkit won't do it, so then we end up having Wario do it. However, unfortunately, the policemen have an RPG, which is stronger than the toy pistol that we got at the store. So then they eventually have to yeet themselves out of the bike, and they happen to hide behind a bush as the policemen think that they're dead. So they manage to clutch up here. And then they're like, yo, how do we get there? Because we don't have a bike. But then Wario... I'm dying doing the Wario. Then Wario actually has a second bike. Wahaha. Right, which is incredible. Mr. Incredible. Ends up managing to make it to like just leaves Medkit behind with the second bike. Goes whoa, and Medkit just that's completely in the dust. Everybody's left him behind. The poor soul. He rejoined like 3 seconds ago. But yeah, they end up being bailing. And I think that's everything. So now we have ourselves the costume. The first costume is Gex. Spy costume gets an 8 out of 10. It was good. There's not really much to say about it. It was pretty good. Like it was. I approve of the style and decisions in it. I'm gonna approve. So yeah. Then we have the Wario, which ends up eating the garlic and turning into Wario Man, I think, or whatever it's called, which is the hero. Um, uh, who eats the garlic, right? So then it ends up being okay, but it gets a 5 out of 10. It was like fine. I mean, to be fair, it's just a transformation that Wario can actually do. It's not really a costume. So I understand the 5 out of 10 rating here, even if it's not the reason why we end up getting the 5 out of 10. Scrunchy ends up getting some wheelchair costume, gets a 7 out of 10, which isn't even that bad, but Medkit ends up having the cowboy costume, which is doing okay until Medkit, for some reason, happens. It's, again, legally required that when you say yeehaw, you have to shoot the gun at somebody. Apparently, this is just a rule. So Medkit shoots H. H nearly died, but remember, H is immortal. But then, of course, you get a 0 out of 10. Medkit Uther is super hard. And then eventually we end up having Steam's perfect costume, which is the duck from the Lemonade song. So Steam is going to sing the Lemonade song until eventually they have a gun, and they eventually win, getting a 10 out of 10. It was funny, and in a way, in Halloween, you want to lighten up the mood more than you want to be anything, right? So I agree. Because having Gex win was going to be pretty bad. Like, Wario is kind of too obvious. Scrumply just isn't very good. Medkit just isn't very good either. And Gex wasn't really supposed to be a costume, which means that Steam should probably win in this case. Who gets eliminated here? I feel like that's a great question. I think it's Wario. I think it's Wario. No, but is it Wario? Wario. I'm scared because Wario has always been a fan favorite. I think Wario has been the fan favorite. Wario's like the Seth Rogen Donkey Kong of the edition. But Medkit, I feel like it's pity because they got Death in the Dust so much. Gex was cool and Scrumpy had the battle. You know what? Sorry, but I gotta say Wario. I think Wario's gonna go. You know what? Maybe I'm gonna be 100% wrong, and Wario's gonna be the first safe, right? Last time we managed an incredible 24. No, I'm sorry. Something's up. Who cheated? Who the hell cheated? Somebody's got to tell me. There's no way that just organically happened. I refuse to believe it. It's impossible. Who was like, yo, let's vote out this way? Who did the organized voting campaign? Nah. How 24-6? And like 24-6, what happens when you're the meanest character in the world? And then you were like mildly stupid. There's no way. Nah. Whatever. Whatever, bro. Then we end up having the stage where Wario finally gets caught by the police. And so the medkit. Fair enough. I mean, hey, at this point, the fact that Wario isn't even that. It's not like the fact that somehow Wario has done less of the crimes of that duo. I think it's hilarious. What do you mean Wario is technically the one that probably will get less jail time? Like it's just hilarious. But Yeah, that is episode 8. Overall, it's pretty solid. It's pretty long, but it's not necessary. Like it's 21 minutes. It's not really 21 minutes in the way where it actually feels super grand. It just has a lot. It just has a lot of stories, right? In the way that this show makes up, like, can invent stories out of absolute thin air. Just out of one liner gags, and just invents an entire story out of that. Remember, this episode, it ends up as 20 minutes because it does more support of that at the same time, kind of, right? It like picks itself up with, like, the Gex story is technically important, right? The Scrunchy story is actually pretty big deal, right? And then, like, some of the characters aren't as important, but even like the road run ends up being kind of a big deal, right? Like, we end up having quite a lot of, like, relatively large little plot lines going on in the episode. So then you end up having a longer episode. It's not really because anything that important is happening, just because there's a lot of middle of the road things happening, right? Okay, that's all that I've got for today. So I'll be back in tomorrow, hopefully, for me to have taken a look at episode 9. Okay, I will have taken a look at episode 9. I will have chatted about it. The episode's called Rift to Go. Let's go to me in the future who took a look at that episode. Okay, cool. Alright, welcome in. I watched episode 9 of Flesh 2. It is the next day. Shit has released in the night, which is unfortunate news for me. However, we will get to it, even if it's going to be very late. However, at some point in time, we will get to it. But for now, we have to wrap up Flesh 2, okay? Oh, no playing games out here. So we start off here with Wario and, Medkit in jail because remember, they got arrested in the last episode for murdering everybody. We have this one joke about the toilet that isn't a great toilet, like 400 times over, which is fun. Joke by repetition is like when they mention a thing, it's like, ha, that's a gag. And then when they mention it 5 times, say, oh, the gag is that the gag is playing multiple times. You see, it's like, ooh, it's spicy. It's a little bit of a variation on the original idea. It adds on an additional gag to the gag, which is why I think repetition gags tend to work. There's also a watermark on this bucket somehow. But eventually, they managed to get bailed out of prison by the billions of dollars that the show currently has. So, it's not exactly going to be a problem in that aspect. And, you know, I feel like this episode a little bit is starting to possibly set ourselves up for any future endeavors into finales, right? Because we're really close to a finale. At the end of the day, they were this episode, and then the next episode, and then it's the finale, right? And the finale is a big deal. So I'm wondering, and the last time, it was so important to the lore, right? That here is like, what are we doing? What is the plot? I don't really know. But we're sort of seem to be setting it up. People are dropping in from the sky more and more, right? Like, what, 8 people drop from the sky this time around? That's a lot of people, right? So, like, things start to get questioned. They seem to be from different universes and different shit, and they can do different things. And it's like, I don't know what's going on, but it's kind of suspicious, right? But first, let's chat about the elimination. 43 votes, as usual. Wario doesn't get eliminated though. Wario actually gets the second least votes with 9, and then our eliminated contestant ends up being Medkit with 16. Yeah, I mean, the Wario's obviously the fan favorite because, like, you'll notice how this is playing itself out, right? It's going like, yeah, Wario does dumb shit with somebody, right? Of an equal measure, all right? Then they're both up for elimination, and then the other character gets all the votes. Wario never gets the votes, right? So Wario's obviously the fan favorite. Wario is the Seth Rogen Donkey Kong of this edition, which means that Wario probably is gonna win because people just kind of find him funny as an idea, and they act charismatic. Like, when they say, "Oh, Wario is like," when people in the Mario universe say, "Oh, Wario is charismatic," right? And like they are super convincing, right? In a way, you think, "Oh no, that's not true. This guy's bullshit." But in a situation like this, like this show, you don't notice. You know what? Wario is charismatic in a way where it's like people don't vote for them. People won't vote for Wario because they find him to be a good presence to be around because he just radiates this energy. Even if it's kind of stupid energy, it's better energy than usual. And people already aren't too big fans of Medkit, so goodbye Medkit. You have been eliminated right after joining, which is the way of life. And then the fellas drop down from the sky. They all fly away. I don't know how the croissant dropped from the sky, considering that, like, what? A sock puppet also drops from the sky, which is really interesting considering, I mean, I guess there isn't a medkit to be honest. If medkit was there, they just missed it by like a minute. They missed it by like 30 seconds, bro. Like, if medkit saw sock puppet, that would be the end of the world. That would be like massive. That would be groundbreaking. But they miss it by like 30 seconds. So it's rather unfortunate. So then our challenge ends up being go fetch the people. The most people that you fetch will be safe, right? If you fetch the most people, and then fellas go over. So most of them flew over into the sky using flying abilities, right? That they have. Um, Everybody except for the censorship bar, which ended up mining down. And Wario was like, "Yo, I don't know how to go to the sky, so I'm gonna go to the ground." Okay, yeah, valid idea. However, no, it's actually not. It's not a valid. It's actually terrible because, like, at the end of the day, we are making a conscious effort to go very far away from the majority to go fetch the singular, right? It's not a good idea. When you need the most, you have to go look after the most. It's like it doesn't matter if you get a little bit, right? It's not like a placement. It's not like getting one is better than zero. No, if you get one, if you get zero, it really doesn't matter, right? Like, it is the same level because you just go up for elimination. It doesn't matter what placement you get, right? So you absolutely have to go to the sky. It's just the best way, right? Um, Drunchi manages to just YOLO it because who cares about physics anyways? And then Steve manages to hijack the helicopter, which Gex Disc, employs from the last challenge. So then they both decide to go together to not do that. And yeah, so section by section. Let me call it because there's about 3 sections technically taking place here. So, um, copyright protect. Okay, let's start with Wario. So Wario chases after copyright protection bar, which is some sort of Minecraft fella. Also, right? They deal with the Minecraft art. All right. Um, so they proceed to try to run away from Wario. They go into the Never, right? Then Wario follows them into the Never. They spend a while looking for them. Then eventually they find them in the middle of the lava in one of those freaking lava riding things that they have now. But there is a creature from the Never. I don't remember the name. Then Wario ends up taking two of them to a bike, right? So they catch a copyright protection bar, and then they spend ages trying to figure out how to get back. Like, literally a mountain ton of time. So they do that until eventually being like, "Yo, where is the portal?" And then it happens that the portal was literally right next to them. I love the gag. Okay, like, I'll call out inconsistency, but in a show like this, when the inconsistencies actually point out, it's really funny, right? Like I said, wow, this fireball truly is taking a long time. Like, yeah, it really is. But like, it's funny now that you mention it. Like, as soon as you mention it, as soon as it become as like the inconsistency becomes meta humor, it's kind of fun. You know, in a joke show, right? So like, I don't mind it. But yeah, eventually Wario gets back, he gets crushed by a plane, and then it's one. They got one. Okay, you can debate whether they got zero because the guy died or you got one, but I say they got one. Okay, all right. Then Drunchy ends up sort of just skying it, finding those three birds. And then eventually in a superb 1v1 between guns. They manage to successfully shoot down the birds, and then Drunchi manages to catch them, which is pretty good. I mean, Junchi just has that capability of reintegrating, right? Like they disintegrate super easily, but they reintegrate from then on out. They don't like that's the thing about Junchi. Junchi doesn't get respawned in the same way as everybody else. If everybody else dies, they don't just regain materialization there and then. They get revived from the fellow, right? In the meantime, Drunchi, when they respawn, they don't respawn, they regenerate, right? That's kind of the big difference that happens there with Drunchi, which means that like they manage to get shot. Oh, that was a blip. I'm back, right? So the other fellas get down, and Drunchi eventually comes back with 3. All right then. Everybody is getting chased over in the sky. A trio of fellas, Michael, Jordan, the Saw Puppet, and the Moai fella, end up fighting over. As Gex Disc ends up eventually being the only one left on the plane after Steam falls out. So then Gex Disc manages to shoot a basketball, which ends up being a trap. Because of course Michael Jordan tries to catch the basketball because Mac Jordan, right? And then eventually the trap ends up working out for Gexis, which ends up getting 3 as well, all right? And then, in the meantime, who else do we have? We have Steam. Okay, so Steam is falling from the sky, ends up crashing into the bug and croissant, because remember, the bug flew away with the croissant, right? So, then, the croissant is the one guy who's really interesting, because, like, if you think that, oh, everybody dropped in from a different universe, okay, cool, but the croissant wasn't from a different universe, so what the hell's going on? Right? Like the croissant just from this universe, Like we're just there's not too much going on. Like the croissant was just here already, so like we saw them multiple times. So what the fuck? But yeah, they're falling from the sky and say, "No, we're gonna die." But then Bible Man and Jesus come in and do a tag team save of the two, which is a gaming express. Steam thanks them, and then they all get crushed. But eventually Steam just freaking goes like, "All right, y'all coming with me." And then Steam locks it down at 2. So then, what are our final standings here? There's only 4 competitors here, so we end up not really having too many. Like the amount of overarching plot lines in each episode, they start to shrink, even though they actually don't shrink that much, because in general, like in the previous episodes, we always went in duos, right? But here we're starting to, go a bit more in solos. So yeah, Wario ends up getting 1. Gex Disc ends up getting 3 alongside Drunchi, and Steam gets 2. So Steam and Wario are up for elimination. They just simply didn't get enough. And then, in the meantime, Gexis and Drunchi are going to need to do a tiebreaker. For a moment, I was nearly expecting them both to be safe, but no, one of them has to win, right? So then, which one of them wins? They end up playing rock, paper, scissors to find out, Gexis and Drunchi. And then it just so happens that Drunchi plays rock while Gex plays scissors, which means that Drunchi successfully wins Gex's fucking bar over the eyes. So Drunchi is safe and has made it to the final 3. In the meanwhile, everybody else ends up being up for elimination. So, yeah. The other fellas end up going into the basement of the house, probably where he is, let's be honest. So, not great news for the other ones. Not great news for the older fellas, but I guess that's why you don't drop down from the sky. And then Gex, Steam, and Wario are for elimination. So, I mean, Wario is going to win the show. I'm gonna be honest. In my opinion, Wario's gonna win the show. They just don't get votes. They just don't get votes. They can be like absolutely abysmal to chance. They can be mean. They can do literally anything. But it's okay because it's Wario, right? It's that thing where it's like because it's sort of what Wario would be like when Wario does a mean thing or does a bully. It's not like, oh, why did you do that? Kind of like when Steam is mean at somebody, it's like, oh, Steam, why did you do that? But like when Mario does that at someone, it's like, oh yeah, that's good characterization, because it has to be that way. So Wario's not going home. I don't think so. And then Steam, God, I think it's Gex. Gex gotta go, I think, unfortunately. They got the second most votes the other time, despite the other time them being relatively cool. In this case, they weren't too interesting. I think they were I think they were less interesting than Steam. But those two were pretty equidistant because they did, of course, take part of the same plane, right? Like Steam went into the hijack the airplane, but something. I think it's Gex Disc, though. I have to predict Gex Disc in this case. I just found them to be a little bit less interesting, and they were already risking it. Seemingly more than Steam the last time. I mean, Steam was safe the other time, but like, they were risking it a little bit more. So yeah, I have to say in this case that I think Gex Disc is going to be going, going to be going home, which is unfortunate. I like Gex Disc, but you know what? Like, I like the characters in the show. You'll be surprised. Like, in a way, the like extreme of like the gags being delivered, they do form you this connection with the characters, right? Because I was wondering this. I was like, why do I really like Bonk? Why do I like Steam? What is happening? Like, because in general, I don't really like characters that often in the sense of like I'm specifically like I enjoy seeing characters, right? I don't. There's in every show I enjoy seeing the characters in it. However, it's like I usually don't go out of my way to go like, yes, this is the one, unless in like very specific cases. But in this show, I've done that very consistently, right? So I was wondering like what was happening, and I think it's because the extreme like values in a way of like the things that they do, the jokes that they portray, right? It's so out there that you'll resonate with the characters who do it a little bit more, right? So you're like, if you resonate with the jokes that Wario does, Wario is going to be your favorite outright, right? Because it's bold, it's not subtle. When something is subtle, yeah, you'll start enjoying it slowly, right? But this show just beats you over the head with it, which means that like if you're gonna like a character, like if you like the guys that a character is pulling, they'll pull it constantly and you'll like it constantly, right? I like a little bit more low key style, so I like Steam and I Bong, but it's fun. And Gax discussed the whole spy voice lines fella is also very fun. And Drenchy has the more extreme version of that same character trait, which is also probably one of the reasons why I think Gexis should probably get eliminated. Because, well, I mean, Gexis is cool. They do end up being a very similar type to Drenchy in the sense that, like, they're both voice lines based characters, right? That play to that same rhetoric. So I would probably get one of them out for the finale, for not the finale, right? But like the final three, right? Um, but yeah, I think that's probably why in this show you're more prone to really liking the characters in it than not, which is a strength. Absolutely, if you can resonate with the characters, you're gonna want to watch the characters. You're gonna want to watch the show. All right, episode 10, double digits reach for the first time. It is titled Irregular Show, so like Muscle Man might be making a cameo. Let's go with it. Let's watch it. Let's do that stuff. Alright, that is episode 10 of Flesh 2 Irregular Show. So let's start at the end, okay? Because I didn't really discuss this the other time, but we're gonna discuss it here. So Hexagon is doing the whole plans, whatever, right? This feels a little bit less prepared than the other time. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, like, the other time, like, somehow with way less episodes to build out a narrative, Piano's narrative in Flesh feels like it was more thought out than the narrative that Hexagon has here. Because Hexagon in episode 3 is like, yup, I got a time machine. And then 3 episodes later, we go like, yep, still got the time machine. Right? Okay, cool. So you know what happens in the future. All right. And then you do nothing about it until episode like 9, right? Last episode, where you go, yep, still got a time machine. So then after you do all of that shit, you decide to, in this episode, hit up piano, right? You hit up the piano and you go, yo, I need you right now, okay? So it's like, so then they go like, yo, in the alternate universe, you did the whole shebang, and then you lost to the Seth Rogen Donkey Kong, right? Because of the multiversal theory, whatever, right? Um, because we're realistically probably in another universe. So yeah, this is interest. This is interesting because like I think this implies, right, that we are currently in a different universe than the one which we wanted, right? Because I was already thinking, oh, this is the alternative timeline that happens after Seth Rogen Donkey Kong. Okay, that's fair. However, it's actually not. It's just a different universe. So presumably, while a horse invented the universe, um, that universe, there's other universes. So I think that the hamster, that's the prize here, is gonna actually probably be the same thing as the horse, right? In the way that it's like, oh, it's a multiversal whatever, right? It's like a universe creator being that gets taken by a host to use for profit, right? So that's like interesting. Muscle Man apparently also teleported from regular show, which is fair. um Again, it's interesting because I mean you can call them. Isn't that interesting? Like apparently most of them was TP'd here from regular show. However, at the same time, they could still call the regular show people, right? They called fives the other time as well, right? Like I don't really know how the hell this works, but either way, Larry the Potato won in court. Good job. Good job on winning. Sustained damages or whatever, until eventually they get shot a couple of times and die, which is unfortunate. But don't worry, I think they'll be back. I think there's no way Larry the Potato. I'm telling you, what if Larry the Potato is gonna be the savior? I'm telling you, can that happen? Can that happen? That's in the cards for this show. Yeah, at this point, I'm into the Larry the Potato plotline. I need to see it develop. I know the guy died, but no, I need the guy to come back. I don't care. Nah, like the guy was sliced up for the show, and you think that this guy died just because they got shot? No, 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 no. I'm telling you, it's gonna be the ultimate battles, and I'll be like, I cannot defeat you, piano. And then they go like, okay, but I can't. But Larry can. And then Larry the Potato comes in, wins. I know that I'm such a good writer. This is why I'm not making an objection. But yeah, those four is pretty sad about Larry the Potato. And then we have the elimination. 43 votes. Mario gets the least, and then Steam gets the most by one. Okay. Uh, yeah, I mean, I am getting pretty bored of these votes. I'm gonna be absolutely for real. They don't have I don't care about them. I currently. They're very just kind of like fan based, in a way that I said that, like, oh, it's cool that this show builds you stronger connections to the characters, right? Because of like the way that the jokes are more extreme, and therefore the characters that, like, you resonate with them a lot more. It kind of is boring at a in a rate like this, right? Because it's just the Warriors gonna be safe every time. One of the others is probably gonna get eliminated, or whatever. Right? Gex doesn't get eliminated. It's Steam by one vote, but like whatever's one vote. Like, I think that this show probably, with the thing about it is that I think it just kind of, even though it's got a good chunk of votes, I think that it never really found itself enough mainstreamness to properly balance out these numbers, right? Like, if the votes were closer to 100, I think I would see it changing. However, with these 40 voters that I think are probably very similar voters, um, from moment to moment, it really doesn't change that much. So Steam goes bye bye. Goodbye. And then we end up having ourselves the challenge, which ends up being well, actually no, first the host wants to do a super challenge about going like some to hell or whatever, right? And then the final three, which is presumably, which is an absolutely abysmal final three. In terms of like the actual qualities of these three, in terms of like competitionally speaking, wow. You know, like, wow. Drenchy is a fighter, who kind of YOLOs it, right? And is very good at fighting. Wario is very good at like that specific skill set and just throws every other challenge. And then Gex Disc, to be fair to them, they are pretty good at things. Like they make some dumb decisions, but they tend to overall be relatively smart at what they do. But yeah, it's an interesting final three. Having that Drenchy Gex this combo is kind of interesting because again, it's two voice lines characters back to back in the final three. This is why again I think Steam here makes a much better combo because Steam acts as a third. Right, like the thing about Gexus and Drenchy is that like at their core they're still pretty similar, you know. However, while Steam would have made a third, an interesting third to these two at least for the episode, but no. Anyway, then they're going to the park where R is there, the park ranger. Ah, yes. And basically their park is full of trash. Okay, so then how do we do that? Everybody gets a lot of the park, and then they have to make it look better. The nicest, clean up, do that shit. Nicest section of the park wins. So let's go play by play here. All right. So starting off here with Wario. Wario decides that it's roughly an interesting idea to not clean up the trash because that's a waste of time, right? Because if you, I mean, it kind of depends. If you clean up the trash, you will have it look nicer, right? But it won't look a lot nicer, right? So in this case, Wario thinks I am going to decorate the park rather than clean it because it'll look nicer more clearly if there's something nice to look at rather than there just being nothing to look at, right? Um, so at least we can have like a niceness that counteracts the bad rather than removing the bad and then it's just completely neutral, right? Which in a way, I mean, it's an interesting way to think about the challenge that I think is correct in a lot of aspects. However, Wario it just isn't very good at decorating. They end up decorating, and by decorating, I mean they order Arby's. They order a lot of Arby's. Um, until eventually they go for their own order, which is apparently missing a burger. Okay, so it misses the burger. However, wait, they got the half-pound roast beef. Yes, which means that because one of them got stolen by a rat, right? So then Mario's like, "What the hell?" Then you will chase the rat. They enter one of those multi-dimensional portals, which just so happen to exist in this world. I like what nobody questions those. No, those are no, they totally Gucci with me. It's like, why? What do you mean? Hexagon's a weird one. But anyways, yeah, the portal ends up bringing them over to a rubber room full of rats, which is apparently a copy pasta. I don't think I've ever heard it. At least, no, I probably heard it, but I can't currently remember off the head. But apparently, it's a copy pasta. And eventually, Wario ends up having a super battle with the rats. We end up playing the video of like Minecraft versus Fortnite battle or whatever, which is funny. But yeah, Wario eventually gets beat up, but while they get beat up, they manage to steal the half-pound roast beef, and then they get back and say, whew, on a hard day's work. And then, however, it just so happens that because of the other fellas, there's a big explosion over there, and the entire section burns on fire, and there's not much Wario can do about it. To be fair, in this case, there's not too much that we can do about it. Then Drenchy and Gex Disc are off doing what they were supposed to be doing, to be fair. They weren't really going up against it until eventually a weird snake guy comes out from a multi-dimensional port and then happens to attack them both, right? And I thought, well, I mean, bigger problem now. So then Gex Disc and Drenchy do an ultra team up to try to take them down, right? So Gex comes in with the range weapons, guns, the helicopter, and everything. Drenchy comes in with the melee weapons, right? Knife and sword fight, and then they end up connecting because they lack fight bullshit, right? And then eventually they manage to take it down together. However, in the takedown, right, we have to defeat this eldritch snake being, you need to give it a laser, like, which is pretty fun. But this means that it destroys a lot of that we were in, right? But thankfully for Gexix, the lot that we were in was actually just was Drenchy's plot of land and not Gex's plot of land, which means that by doing that, Gestisk is technically, I mean, doing what they had to, because it's better to not have the fella there, but they end up doing that whole shebang. So then the ranger comes in to check. 0 out of 10 for Scrumpy because they destroyed the park. 0 out of 10 for Wario because, it's on fire. It's not his fault. It's not Wario's fault, to be fair. Like, you think that it'd be Wario's fault because it's always Wario's fault. In this case, I mean, it is in the sense that Wario, of course, did spend a load of time doing nothing, right? And it didn't clean up the trash and didn't do anything. Okay, yeah, true. But, like, they couldn't have started the fire. Like this was not up to Wario. In this case, it really was not up to Wario, right? So yeah, and then Gex Disc ends up having their own section being like okay. It really didn't change, like it's not too much. Like, at least Gexis throws away a cup in the garbage before anything else, right? Which is apparently something that they never did. Yeah, no, they never did. They used the trash can instead of the floor to throw away a random cup that Gexis had before flopping on the floor and dying. Which means that Gexis wins automatically. Gexis will probably win anyway. Because, I mean, they didn't do anything, right? Which is better than the negative things that the other fellas did, right? But good job, Gexis. You have made it to the final after getting one vote away from getting out. Which means that they get to pick who is safe. Gextis obviously picks Drenchy. I mean, they kind of correlated. However, while deciding, they don't let the bro speak, which means that they pick Scrumpy. However, it was a vote to eliminate that wasn't thought about, which means that Gextis, despite wanting Scrumpy in the finale, ends up accidentally eliminated Scrumpy. And Wario makes it to the finale. What do I think of this? I mean, it's okay. We are going, of course, we're going against we're doing an accidental elimination. It was kind of goofy. Of the character that will get eliminated, right? However, this just ensures me now Wario's gonna win. There's no way Gexis isn't winning this show. I'm super sorry. There just isn't a way because my presumption about what the hell is going on is that, like, I think that what they do is that in the final voting about who's the favorite, who's the least favorite, they just take the person who is the favorite and they make them win the show. Right, like that's the presumption. So that way they can still do a challenge, like they do. It's a vote to win in disguise, right? Because they still do a challenge, right, and everything. However, so you can have a big finale. However, at the end of the day, you still pick out the winner that overall would have been chosen the vote to win, basically, right? So it's very masqueraded. However, in this case, I would have, I think I would have eliminated Wario because at least it makes an interesting duo. Because I think between Gexis and Wario, there's no competition. Wario's way more popular than Gexis, at least what the votes have said, right? Gexis just barely got eliminated, which means that Wario should win this easily in terms of a voting, right? Which then kind of made me wonder, at least if you put Drunch and Gexis, like, this is kind of. It's kind of different. I mean, again, I said that those two have, yes, they share this a very similar DNA, right? But like, in general, as a kind of being, at least they're closer in terms of fans than the other fellows, which I think are really tough. We end up having a couple of votes on who your favorites and non-favorites are. You can vote for your fellas in season 2, and also everybody combined from season 1 and season 2, featuring everybody else, right? Which is interesting. I wonder if Sephiroth and Donkey Kong's gonna win. My presumption is, man, Wario got so little votes just in general. I think they probably end up as the favorite. But yeah, I don't know. You can vote for your 5 most favorite and 5 least favorites. If it occurs, my top 5 favorites are probably Bonk, Steam, Gex Disc, Cookie Milk, and like Scrumpy. Out of like the general batch, because I think they're pretty cool. So yeah, that's all cool. But we end up having, what's the post credit scene in this episode? Oh yeah, yeah, Hexagon with piano. I forgot that, like, I already talked about it. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Look, I don't know. It's that type of finale that I think it is gonna be different because Seth Rogen, Donkey Kong, and Goku had, for all of their goofiness, they are genuinely okay at their own at fighting, right? Like they do good fighting. And Piano was a genuinely threatening force. I think that Hexagon is an abysmal disaster. However, the duet of Gex Disc and especially Wario is also an abysmal disaster in terms of just ability, right? Which means that this duo is and that duo are probably about to give us the worst set of fighting I have ever seen. It is going to be abysmal in terms of like actual skill and capability. It's gonna be fun to watch. When I mean worse as in they're gonna be bad at fighting. I don't mean that it's gonna be bad to watch. It's gonna be entertainment. They're gonna be bad at it. Okay, it's gonna be like Doom Spire Braid battle levels of bad, right? So good luck to them, I guess. It's time for the finale of Flesh 2, the big old special, the big old half hour. This show is okay, I guess. Let's go. All right, so that is the finale, the last episode, episode 11 of Flesh 2, and also what seems to so far be the ending of Flesh as a franchise, what seems to be the ending of at least for the time being, it's looking like the ending of maybe just every piece of work that Flavio does. I haven't seen anything else really prop up. I mean, it's all looking like, it's a couple of camp challenges, some repo, right? Like, in general, it's not looking like we are on the course to make any other video, any other show, any other thing. So I have to treat this in a little bit of a different situation because as far as we are aware right now, this is the magnum opus. It is the end, right? I mean, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure, but it certainly sounds like it, right? Which I mean, then we have to treat it as the end of not only a show, but possibly even a creator's works, right? So we end up having ourselves a warning. Then we also have an episode that apparently the episode is dedicated to a cat. It is so difficult to tell if this is for real. I'm sorry, because like even at the ending of the video, you end up having a dedication. But I think it was like, who was the dedication at the ending for? It was for something dumb. Uh, it was something. Hold on. Let me let me see what it was for, cause now I'm curious. It was for the big old. Hold on. I can't find it. Wait a minute. I'm trying to find it. I cannot find the thing. Where is it? Oh yeah, in loving memory, Michael, who apparently died. Um, but yeah, it's really hard to have a joke. But shout out to that cat. And now we have ourselves the early lore. So the early lore dump. So Hexagon. Why is Hexagon any type of powerful, any type of capable? Okay, so we learned that apparently Hexagon was from the Shape Land, Shape World, right? Um, and they were getting heavily ostracized from Shapetown by their peers, and they didn't really know why, because they're like, I don't look weird, I'm just a shape like the rest of them, right? Which is like fair, you know, like I don't get it. So Van Hexagon, their only ever friend who didn't ostracize them, shun them from society, was Octagon, who was pretty similar, but yeah, they're in general vibe, and they were really together until Octagon unfortunately decided that they were going to compete in a show or something. They were going to go do a thing. I think it was compete in a show, but they were going to do a thing, okay? Um, and basically they have to leave, which leaves Hexagon entirely alone. So then Hexagon is like, yo, what the hell is going on? So they decide to go over to the commandments, and there is a big old commandment right there that is very simple. Hexagons cannot exist. If hexagons realize their potential and the fact that they are the most powerful, they will destroy the world with their power. So Hexagon realizes this and understands why society has shunned them forever. Because they cannot, because it is in the commandments that hexagons may not have the right to know of their powers, otherwise they will abuse them, which is interesting. So of course, when we discover this, we proceed to abuse the power. Yeah. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting things about this as they go over to leave. They see some sort of a portal. First of all, this also. Oh wow! What an incredible little voice crack. We end up realizing a couple of things. So, Hexagon is not from this world either, which is really interesting because I mean that we did have the fella drop down, right? Of course, Madkit and Joe Burt drop down to enter this like timeline to properly partake in this Flash season 2. However, the other fellas were presumed to just be there, right? They were presumed to just be like, oh, yo, we're there. However, it's actually no, it's not. The correlation isn't just those two. It's actually a general correlation because like you saw in the last episode, we heard the story Muscle Man was TP'd from regular show, right? And in this one, you get to see the Hexagon was maybe TP'd from Shapetown, right? Which is interesting. That means that everybody in that land realistically probably came in from a world. We have a new intro for the finale. This was hype. Oh, that was absolutely hyper shit. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like this is based on another intro. If it's not, it's super creative because like the way that there's H and then each character drops in around them, like tick 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 tick. But as like the eliminated contestants, like that's just sick, isn't it? But yeah, we end up having the finale, and we go over to host the Fleshies because, of course, it's different, but everything is also the same. So we end up having ourselves the stuff going on. We end up having Wario and Gex this conversating. What's one thing that I learned from this show? It's one thing I learned. I have not the slightest idea what Gex is about. I'm looking at these lines and I'm like, yo, what? How? When does Gex speak this? When does Gex say this thing? It is unknown. I don't know when does Gex say this. Like, have you ever seen the backside of lava? When would you say that? Because, like, okay, I think that Gex is trying to be cool 90s protagonist that like chats with you, right? It's kind of like Sonic or whatever. I mean, Sonic doesn't even talk to you that much, right? But like kind of those characters, right? There's like a type of character. I'm really trying to think of another one. I know like Bubsy in recent memory is very similar to that in the way that like they actively speak to you throughout the game. But like I guess Gex is just in that style, which is interesting. Look, I don't know shit about Gex. Okay, who knows anything about Gex? Anyways, the fleshies. We end up having everybody drop in, the siblings as well. Which, fun fact, apparently the siblings in the order of their appearance ends up actually standing for hamster. Hamster, right? Is the order in which the letters appear, which is way too smart for me to believe that this show did on purpose. I thought that we probably did A and M, and then we probably did AMS, and then we were like, oh shit. like bro, like halfway through the season we realized that was a possibility and we're like, yo, we gotta do it. Like, I refuse to believe that was planned from the start. This show doesn't plan shit. Like there's no way. That's crazy because like, you think about it, the apartment showing up before the main, is that even correct? Shouldn't it? Should I don't know because they technically appear in the same scene, which is why it's kind of complicated. But I don't know which one appears first. It's not the main. No, it's somebody who guides them to the apartment. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, they do actually because partridge in a tree or whatever you're called guides over the second eliminated contestant, which was Hexagon, right? um, to the land of England, and then they bring them over to the apartment, who sends them over to the room where there's the maid. Okay, yeah. I remembered. Um, but overall, what do you think of that hexagon plotline? I think it's cool. However, like I don't mind it. I mean, is it generic? No, it's not even generic. I think it's pretty original. However, I think that like it's uh may I would have kept that backstory for a different episode, not gonna lie, because that's like one of the things, and you can see by the way that I was thinking about it in the past few episodes, it's like there was too much nebulousness about how the hell this finale is gonna play out, right? But which means that there wasn't too much building hype in Flesh One, at least, right? Like we ended up building quite a lot of hype towards the finale because like this is when Piano is gonna send shit to go down. But here is like you see, Hexagon is up to something. Well, you don't get to ever see what the fuck they're up to for any stretch of time until the last episode where they hit a piano, right? And then, okay, maybe then there's a little bit of hype, but I would have definitely had that backstory play out in one of the previous episodes of post-credit scene, because that gets us hyped. It's like, oh shit, like I would have been more hyped knowing that, oh wait, this is why Hexagon mattered rather than currently. Because you look at Hexagon in the last episode, it's like, yo, this bitch ass dumbass is about to try to attack the world and gonna die, right? So like, but now there's actually a reason for Hexagon to be really powerful, right? That we're inventing in this episode though, but I would have tried to invent it in a different episode. A medkit going insane after seeing Soft Puppet. Yeah, that was an expected interaction. Okay, who's your favorite character? By one vote, Wario ends up winning. By a little bit. What are the votes here? I'm curious. Partridge in the Pear Tree gets 0, which is insanity. Then we end up having Gextus gets how many? 15. He's still very light character. Scrumpy gets 19. Bonk Atomipunk gets 16, despite literally not having shown up in the season. Shout out to that. Shout out to that. Truly gotta be one of the goats. So Wadio ends up winning by 1 vote. They get the prize. Good job. Good job, Wadio. You were the fan favorite, pretty obviously. So and then the least favorite votes end up having, hold on, let me see, Partridge and Pear Tree ties with Steven Universe for the least liked contestant, right? Now, the thing about these votes in particular is that, like, it's kind of difficult to say if Partridge in a Pear Tree was actually the most hated contestant, but like in a situation like this where we are voting for, what is it, 5 least liked, yeah, Partridge in a Pear Tree should make it to the 5 least liked for realistically probably everyone, right? Because it's just like so many people. Like there's so many people, and this is one of the ones who did the least, right? But I always find it to see who gets the least votes in the Who's the Least Favorite poll, which is Scrumpy. No, pretty much nobody dislikes Scrumpy. Everybody, you either think that they're okay or you like them, right? Which is nice. It's fun. And that is all cool. So then we end up having ourselves Hexagon arrive. So interesting thing about this always that I thought was interesting both in the last season and interesting also in this season is that like teleporting is a thing that you can do. That's one of the things that I find the most weird about the way that this show has been structured. Is that, like, teleporting is a thing that this show can definitively do. So I'm always confused at why the hell does this do it? Right? Like, okay, you can teleport somebody out. You can teleport somebody in. I don't think you need to know where they are. Like, oh, where's Hexagon? I don't know. You fucking teleport them. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So I just find it interesting how, like, people at Hexagon or Piano are capable of evading teleportation, well, like, that's specifically what we make everybody else do, which is kind of weird. But Hexagon ends up being like, yo, I need y'all to comply until they decide not. Moai fella ends up attacking. They proceed to die. And then they end up having, they don't want to, they don't comprehend the power. Then we end up having the Kirby's, which end up coming in as well as Piano. Yeah, and then Octagon pops by from a different multi-dimensional portal that you can also do. And I didn't know that was also part of the testament, that the guy was that Octagon was also pretty good. Not gonna lie, but I guess we now know. We end up having some fellas. Then we end up having the comeback of Seth Rogen, Donkey Kong, and all of the season 1 cast end up arriving from this multi-dimensional portal. Whether it's Go-Head, whether it's Bonk, whether it's any of the other people, they all come back. However, then we end up having the horse. Hexagon turns the entire world into hexagons with the power of the horse, which is indeed what ends up happening. And then we have what is happening? So we end up hitting up the piano. Yeah, we're like, okay, where the piano's from a. Wait a minute. So the piano doesn't know who they are, but apparently the horse was within their grasp from that universe because we're just grabbing other people's universe. So even though Seth Rogen and Donkey Kong decided that they wanted Butcher and the fella, the other guy, to never existed in their universe, this is unfortunately a multiversal world. So this multiversal world does in fact mean that there are other universes where there are horses and there are other universes where butchers do in fact exist, which means that, yeah, it's rather unfortunate. Then they need the power of the hamster to be capable of taking them down. However, we end up having H format that which will take about half an hour. So in the meantime, they go over and charge the time. Gex and Wario end up running away to run away. However, yeah, they just go run away, of course, because they gotta go fetch whatever, right? They gotta go fetch Hexagon. And in the meantime, everybody else ends up on the quest to take down Piano and the Kirbys. Well, specifically Donkey Kong and Goku Head yet again to decide, alright, we know how to do this, so they go over to fight against the piano. The piano is pretty powerful, however, when you have ultra powerful Seth Rogen, Donkey Kong, and also Goku Head, right? Not just both. It ends up being a significant increase in power. Then we end up having the rum fella, which ends up having a battle with a bluebird that existed from a scene. I don't remember which, but they end up fighting until Scottish Handshake. But until eventually Scrunchy ends up managing to defeat them with the golden panda turns you into a gold skin in CSGO. So yeah, they win and then lose, which is nice. I get to see Bonk again, which is great. Love more Bonk in life. You can never have enough Bonk, which is unfortunate because we have had. With this is the last time I will ever see Bonk. But Bonk proceeds to fight McAfee antivirus, which is still one of the funniest sentences I think I've ever had to say. Why are they playing Uno with a +4? They gave a +4 to McAfee. But yeah, Piano and Goku Kid seem to be pretty decent. This piano is very strong because apparently the horse was within their grasp this time. However, in this case, it was pretty interesting. One thing that I actually really liked that they did, okay, and because, okay, I know that I've criticized the joke of Seth Rogen and Donkey Kong being like weed or whatever, but you know what? I want them to lean into it, right? That's kind of what I want to do. Because, like, if you make a guy who just so happens to do one gas in time, it's not that entertaining. But if you can actually make the Seth Rogen part interesting, then yeah, sure, right? So like in this case, when we see that, oh, you smoke the weed and then you end up having super instinct, you end up having weed instinct and you've slowed down time. Like that's just cool, isn't it? Like that's sick shit. That's fire emoji. Like I don't mind. Like that is what I like to see, to be honest. That yes. I need more of that, and I'm surprised they didn't do that in Flash 1, but maybe doing that in Flash 2, very smart. So with that, they end up successfully taking down the piano, throws in a last wow, and then piano successfully dies. So good job. Wario and Gex Head proceed to not have enough fuel for the helicopter. To be fair, it has gotten a tremendous amount of use ever since it randomly appeared for the gag of one episode. And then they find a hexagon's house, which just so happens to be shaped like a hexagon. Octagon drops in entirely to tell them that the hamster is about to be used. For some reason, Canada gets destroyed because why are we doing that? But I don't know. Canada gets destroyed. Goodbye, Canada. I guess, sometimes in life, certain things have to be damaged. Gexhead manages to yeet themselves up. Wario tries to find any way to get up. They manage to get up using that one bird who makes people fly. And then they have arrived up over there to fight the big old hexagon. This duet makes for a battle, which is certainly a battle. It's not, yeah, they're not like incredibly good at battling. As I said, that it was gonna be a pretty piss poor battle. It wasn't amazing. Like, they do come up with some solutions to problems. They throw the gas disc because it would slice them technically in half, right? And other stuff. And in general, Hexagon isn't actually that good at anything. They just end up deciding to, for some reason, take a trip down to Roblox to fight there, and take a trip down to PowerPoint Object Show Land and fight there instead. Right? So Hexagon is just not utilizing their power for any type of actual contribution to themselves. Right? They're not, like, they have the powers, they just don't know how to use them well, right? Because, like, what is the point of bringing them to Roblox or to this land or to whatever land, right? Like, it's there's no point of doing that, because you didn't actually bring them to somewhere where you're advantageous, right? So, like, that's a problem, right? And then we end up having the other fella coming in, and yet again, Wario does pretty okay. I like the gag. I really wish that, dude. I'm upset. I'm upset. Like, the one of Gex's lines wasn't read in a dumb TikTok text to speech. That would have been hilarious. Why didn't we do that? We should have done that, chat. But eventually, they end up flying back. They're over in the real world as well, because of course, reference to Finland. And then we end up having ourselves the bot time. The hamster ends up getting eaten and successfully gets caught by Gex, which goes from emoji glasses to triangular glasses. Wow, 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 wow. Now that is the sign of somebody who is cool as fuck. Good job, Gex head. It's tail time. Whatever that means. But for what? Okay, I feel like you say that a lot. There's a lot of different ways to say tail time in Gex. I feel like it might be tail time in Gex. I don't know. They need to play Gex. Is that a thing I need to do? I need to play Gex to understand the lore. Hey, yo, what's up, guys? Let me to understand. Let's play of Gex. But yeah. Then they end up having a battle. Gex manages to, of course, with the power of the hamster, which is apparently very strong, they absolutely destroy it. And they just do not get stopped at all by anything that the hexagon does. Wario ends up turning into the hero Wario Man, which is not that cool, but hey, again, with the addition power of Gex, they end up being very, very strong, the two of them. They end up having a battle with debatable degrees of coolness. It's not like that cool. It's cool, but it's not like that cool, right? Those two end up having a battle. Yet again, I do commend these episodes a lot, because they do go all out, right? Fight scenes are some of the toughest scenes to make. And this show really doesn't scare away from doing fight scenes, though. I mean, like, we really do. We go kind of nearly all out on these. Like, so much of this episode is just a fight between them two. And then there's the fight between Sarah Rogan and the piano, right? And then there's the fight with the Kirbys, and then there's the fight with the Scottish handshake, right? Like, there's all of these battles, and there's like it really does not fear. Especially when in the other episodes there's already so many fights elsewhere. Right, and it's like, you know what? It's very, very, very commendable. I must admit, like that, like, yeah, it's sick. It's pretty cool. But yeah, we end up having this fight, and then they end up using their ultimate attack, which is, instead of moderately large hexagon, it is very, very, very large hexagon. OMG. Gex proceeds to shoot a very, 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 very large laser instead, which makes it explode. Hexagon gets beat up by Wario Man, and then right as they're going to die, they end up having one final ace up their sleeve. They have still the multi-dimensional thing, but Wario chops it off, including a piece of their head, which officially means that the hexagon isn't a hexagon anymore, because it technically earned a seventh side, and that means that you die. You just die. You cannot. Apparently, that's the way to defeat. If you can literally do any type of damage to a hexagon, or to any shape, I guess, for that matter, and make them not that shape, they just perish on the spot. Decepticon. I shout out to Septagon. We need that character to show up, but no, they actually don't show up. Unfortunately, we do not get to see Septagon. But yeah, I mean, was it underwhelming? I guess it was relatively underwhelming, but they end up losing. Octagon gets them to go back after getting upset because Wario keeps slapping their fingers at this hexagon, which yeah, fair enough. I must also agree. So then they both win. The hamster ends up successfully giving the win to Gex Head. Good job. Gex Head has won against the odds. I already said that I thought that the winner poll was for the sake of choosing the winner in disguise. Turns out that, I mean, I guess not. Wario does get the most votes, but Gex Head wins. It is kind of in theme for Gex Head. Gex Head has kind of played against the wind the entire time. Right, like they seem to win challenges when their backs against the wall, right, and they look like they're about to get eliminated. Meanwhile, like Wario just wasn't very interesting in terms of elimination because they were just safe. Like nobody voted them out ever, so they were just not gonna get eliminated. However, they end up kind of vibing, and Gex Head ends up winning. As usual, I'm gonna do my classic thing. Does the winner represent the season? Because I always think that a winner should represent the season. Gexhead represents Flesh in a way that's different to how Seth Rogen Donkey Kong represents Flesh, right? Gex represents Flesh in the way that they end up kind of pulling in with randomness, right? They're kind of random. The repeated gags that are funny, right? And then they manage to sort of make their way towards the end with this format, right? Where like it plays on restraint, in the same way that this show plays itself on a restraint of the cast and what it has to work with, right? Because this show, again, at the end of the day, it has an abysmal cast to work with. So many of these characters are not very good, right? It's just at a baseline. Like the characters are lifted up by the show, but their baseline, if you think about it, is really low, right? And that is in the same way what Gexhead represents. Gexhead is the rawest form of constraints, right? Gexhead has to be written with a massive constraint of the lines that Gex just has as a character, apparently. And like we end up working with those to elevate the character to new heights, despite the fact that they have this massive constraint. So it represents the show in the way of dealing with constraint and in the way of those repeated gags that the show ends up delivering. So it's in a different way to Seth Rogen Donkey Kong, but it's cool. I like Gexhead. Gexhead is fire. They don't actually wish for anything complicated. They just want egg roll, which I mean, it's pretty good. And then the show ends. Good job to the show for ending. We end up having the credits of every character show up. This is one of those moments that ends up being pretty cool because the capabilities of again, this show's capability of having gags actually play a part in the show by reusing them in this episode or re-mentioning them or making references to it or making them reappear or like having that what a gag does actively impact the future or have it continually reference is something that is very important so the show does. So that's why I think that this show manages to create a sense of it creates a sense of camaraderie that is higher than other shows by just managing to make these characters, right? Like when you see Harry the Happy Elevator, you go, yo, it's that guy. Like it's you get to more properly imagine it, right? Because that's like a reference in the same way, and it's like cool. There's like a shit ton of people in this show, of course. The amount of gags that gets made in 11 episodes is a lot. Why is the bird just called A? I just looked up. Why is the bird just called A? But yeah, I end up having so much shit, but Yeah, the show ends up ending over with the credits, which they end up pretty fire. I know, dude, I'm telling you, there was probably at least 3 tries to make these credits that didn't work because they didn't quite sync up with the exact length of the Mario Kart 8 credits music. I'm telling you, but um, yeah, the staff credits. Our post credits in, we have a guy fall over into the Gmod world, and then we have ourselves the end with the final shot of all of the characters together. Look at all of them. Look at them all. There's Harry the elevator. Is this every alive character? A dead character isn't allowed to be there, right? Yeah, that's every character who's alive in any capacity. So I mean, there's certain characters that are memes, but they didn't die. Like technically, Elon Musk never died in the show. Right? Like, they got all their money stolen, but they technically didn't die, which means that they get to be in the final picture. Is very funny. Medkit and Wonk are there together, which is cute. Steam and Drunchi are also there together, which is cute. Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice image. Um, and then in memory of Michael. And then the show ends. That is Flesh. That is the final piece of content that Flavio has made, at least as far as we're aware in the YouTube audiences. Um, it seems to be the end. Good show. It was a good show. It's a very enjoyable experience, and you can tell by the fact that I wanted to watch it. Like by the fact that I watched Slash season 1, and I probably had other stuff to do. I had Up December. I had Purgatory, which I know about everything that I have to watch. Trust me, I know. It's just that it's time, right? Um, it's time. Holidays, Christmas, I'll take a break. Got other videos to do, right, and all that jazz. So that stuff's all gonna happen. However, this show, the fact that I still wanted to take the time to watch this show, it was gonna take multiple days, it was gonna do something, I think is a testament how it's pretty special, right? And it's nice. It's fun in a way that that like you want to keep watching it, right? It's like a candy. It's like it gives that adrenaline because it's jam packed with jokes, right? Which makes it funny. It's jam packed with action, which makes it cool, and the characters they're fun to watch. At the end of the day, the characters are fun to watch, right? Like a character like Wario is fun to watch. At the end of the day, in my opinion, a character like Steam is fun to watch, right? Gexhead is fun to see. Oh, what will they say next? That somehow fits, right? Then it goes for like Drenchy or anything, like all that stuff. It's fun to watch, you know. And I think that is what this season ended up doing a bit better than the last one. Is that the last season, while it was cool, at the end of the day, it got wrapped up in lore so much that I ended up doing that. This season, I guess by not getting entangled in lore too heavily, right? Like, it was kind of doing the beginning about, oh, how did we get here? But eventually they just kind of been like, oh, we don't know, right? So then it kind of just ended up having so that the later half, it wasn't entangled in lore too much. It was just the fun, goofy vibe that the show always emitted, right? In the cases. Again, I still think that they should have added on a little bit more lore, right? Like the fact that they dumped all of it in the final episode, I think is kind of dumb. I think that, again, 100%, that Hexagon backlash should have been episode 10. Absolutely. I think episode 9 should have been piano, episode 10 should have been backstory, episode 11 should have been just this, but without that scene. I absolutely think that's way better progression, Like, the backstory is a very good way to hype it up. It's a very good way to hype it up, and it's a missed opportunity at the end of the day, right? Because it didn't get you to wonder what's next when it absolutely should have, right? So yeah. But that is Flesh. Would I want to see more of it? I mean, okay, here's the deal. I'm looking at it from a modern perspective, right, of the fact that I literally watched this today. So here's the deal. I personally probably wouldn't mind not seeing it for a while. However, I mean, like, it's been a while. But it's one of those things where it's kind of like when I talked about Object Overload, right? It's like, I mean, Object Overload is significantly older, but but at the end of the day, the base of the concept remains the same, right? Like, it's likely, and I'm fully expecting it not to happen. If it happened, it's cool, right? Like, I don't have anything against the idea of it happening. Like, if it happens, I'll be hyped, right? 'Cause I'll get to see the characters again, and I'll get to follow it live. I think this is a fun show to follow live, right? Because just as I said at the beginning, some challenges ended up being stale to each other when you watch them back to back. However, I think actually following this show during the course of its airing, I think is very nice. But like in general, I have zero expectation of it actually happening. I'm not expecting to see any other Flavio content for because it's just not happened. I mean, when did this release? This released in July 2024, and it's been a solid year and a half, and there's been nothing, right? So like it's not. I don't think it's the expectation that it'll ever happen. However, if it did, it'd be cool. If it did, it'd be cool. If it did, I'd enjoy it. You'll know that you will have. Okay, I got my word. If Flesh 3 or any other series, Christmas Clash 2, the Mountain Brawl, whatever you want to do, right, ends up having a season, I will be right here to watch it. That is mark my word. If it happens, I will watch the latest Flavio content. However, I don't expect it to happen. And hey, people can live lives, go compete in camps or whatever, right? And all that jazz and all that good stuff. Okay. Good luck in life. That's all I can realistically say about Flesh 2. Let's pull ourselves an outro. And that will be all for today's episode of Object Catchup. Yep, it's a day late. However, it's also an hour longer, which means that usually any 3 hour or longer catch-up just has to take multiple days. It just has to, right? And I never wanna actually split them off into multiple videos because it's just kind of awkward to do, right? So yeah, I am pretty satisfied that I didn't end up actually placing this within the watch along Flesh 1 because I misunderestimated how long that was. Because I mean, the Flesh catch up was, how long was it? It was 137. So 137 added to the line of this video, that's nearly 5 hours, which would have been probably a little bit of insanity. Like that's never happened. That's just not happening. There's a reason why it's not happened. 4 hours was the longest catch up for Boyd, right? So yeah, there's a reason why it's not happened, and I currently don't plan on it happening. But yeah, it's a whole situation. It's a whole shebang, right? But yeah, I know what I gotta get to. There's 2 more Object Sember chapters, which will most likely be the next video unless something major randomly drops, which we're kind of in the gunshot range of. Remember, there's apparently supposed to be an animated battle relatively soon, and all that jazz, right? So unless we're in gunshot range of something else, yeah, the idea is to Object Sember the next day, and then after we take a look at the Object Sember, which is going to be, I think, Battle for Death and Supernova Super Show, we should have the day after be Purgatory Dibs and every other new release, including BF4. There was another show, the Logi shows, the other stuff. In fact, like I can check my subscriptions, right? Like the Logi shows to us Horizon, right? Like all of that jazz, be it BD, everything there is on the way. However, those are currently the plan for the next videos for 22nd, 23rd, respectively. I mean, hopefully I can get it done within one day, right? So those are the plans. All right. If they get dismayed or anything else, I will let you know. But those are the current plans for the next batch of days. Keep your toes up. There will be more catch up on the way for sure. That is all for Flesh. For Flesh, we are all caught up. See you next time. Goodbye.